Karl, I'm running out of things to sell to keep Wiki Weekends still running. Just
is that the story we're going for? Is that the law?
is it either that I've been robbed, I'm moving house, or that I'm selling my possessions to keep the channel going? I think we should go with the latter one.
What I should do is start stacking up more stuff behind me. It's like Lucas is selling me his possessions to keep Wiki Weekends going.
Oh dear.
I'm happy with that law.
Let's do it. We'll go with it. We'll go with it. It'll be fine. But yeah, welcome to the Wiki Weekdays podcast, where I, your host, Lucas Holland, is running out of things to sell, and I am joined, as always, by the lovely co-host, Karl Smallwood.
Hello. I am not running out of things to sell. They're all in the other room.
I'd like to say mine are all in the other room. They're all currently in a different location.
Yeah, someone else's house. Literally someone else's house.
And, just, one of those of, as I've mentioned, things are all a bit up in the air at the moment, so we do usually do which wiki won this week, but at the moment we're recording ahead of time and out of order and all this jazz. But
we normally do a lot of things, right?
We do. It's all been thrown up in the air, apart from Pet of the Week, which we still do have. So you can obviously submit a full Pet of the Week over on our Discord if you're a patron. But if you're just on our Discord, you can vote for which pet wins Pet of the Week.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it now. That is the exact level of energy I want on every subsequent Pet of the Week pitch. There's just something about the picture of a dog, a cat, or other pet midway through flipping its fucking shit. And that's the photo, and that's the one you save, right? Because they're always the ones that you look at and laugh every time. Yeah,
exactly, because our Pet of the Week is Minnie, and I've zoomed in on this picture a little bit. You can see in the corner, someone's covered up their face for censorship purposes, because it's about the pets, not the owners, unfortunately, for the owners.
Also, we don't want to put random people's faces on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot easier to put random pets, especially Minnie, in the Pet of the Week, because it's not as identifiable, right? You cannot see Minnie. It's
it's like Crime Watch had a go at that one, right? It's like, do you know on Crime Watch where it's like, have you seen this man? And it's like a blurry CCTV photo.
I was going for the CW Flash show, where the Flash just vibrates their face to stop people seeing.
That show is so funny to try and binge watch because you realise how cheap the effects are. Like every time the Flash runs away, there's someone off stage with an air cannon shooting the actors.
But yeah, there was a couple tied for Pet of the Week, but I just saw that picture of Minnie and was like, no, that's the one.
That's the one.
That is indeed.
Just something about just a dog or a cat or any pet that's midway through flipping its shit. And if you think you have a photo that tops that one in terms of shit being flipped, you're more than welcome to join our Patreon and submit your own.
Indeed, you do. And we've got Pet of the Week, because as I say, we're recording in very different random places. By the time people will have seen this, we'll have recorded next week's episode tomorrow. So there's a random day in the middle of the week, 2 weeks before the next podcast, where the people are going to have one day to submit Pet of the Week, and we'll see what happens with it.
It's as you said, we'll be back to normal in a couple of weeks, no doubt, but it's handy to keep the gimmicks going in the best way we're able to. But once we're back to it proper, then the gimmicks will be reinstated in a more, I'm trying to think now, more specific way, I guess.
Everything will be back to regular schedule, and people will,
regularly scheduled content,
have an actual week to submit Pet of the Week pictures rather than somewhere between 2 weeks and a day.
Yes, and you'll also be able to join our Discord and vote on which wiki won this week and all that good stuff.
Exactly, yes. But Karl, there's not much else to say at the moment other than just, people who are watching on YouTube, make sure to give us a like and subscribe and ring that bell and all that jazz. And then if you're listening on podcast services, then just give us a review if you feel like we've earned a good review. If you feel like we've earned a bad one, that's an option too.
Well, that's the thing. I think we're at a sweet spot at the moment of the success of the channel where we've got a fairly dedicated viewership and it's growing, which is good. But it's not growing fast enough where people are annoyed at seeing it shoved into their peripheral.
Mm-hmm.
And you must think of those classic reviews, right? Of this pub got 1 star, and it's a review from Kathy from Sunderland. I've never been here, 1 star. And it's that kind of energy. It's it's okay.
Yeah,
So I don't think we've had any negative reviews yet.
Yeah, I was listening to the rest of Entertainment with Richard Osman on the other week, and he said a lot of his reviews for his book that end up getting like 1 or 0 stars or whatever of like Amazon never sent the book. It's like, well, it's not my fault. It's like that's not a review of the book.
I understand that is a 1-star review. I didn't get the product, but it's not the product's fault.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
a problem. And I feel like as an author or a creator or a seller, you should be able to like just go to Amazon or whatever platform and just go, come on.
Yeah.
Like, clearly that's not my fucking fault, is it?
Oh, anyway, Karl, as always, the gimmick of the Wiki Weekdays podcast, if people don't know, is that you and I will both bring a wiki for discussion in the podcast, and usually we do a little poll to decide which wiki won this week, but as we said, we're not doing that at the moment. But Karl, which wiki have you brought this week?
Well, this is still going out in October, yes? It should be, if all goes to plan. So I've been doing things that are tangentially related to Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
And something I enjoy about Halloween is the idea of food that is dyed the wrong colour to make it spooky or scary.
Oh, yeah.
Or they give it like a really crap pun name.
Mm-hmm.
Like tomato sauce, they'll like dye it green. It's like, oh, it's spooky tomato sauce.
Well, Karl, if you can see right now, that's exactly what I did with my hair.
You on spooky season, you've gone for the jack-o'-lantern colours.
I did indeed, so anyone watching video-wise, that's why I've currently got like the green and orange going on.
I remember when we did a Halloween costume party and you went as Ghost Rider and you dyed it was really clever. You spiked your hair up and dyed it orange so it was on fire. That was a really interesting way of doing the Ghost Rider cosplay. And you wore like the leather jacket and the leather trousers and stuff and like put the chain over you. That's actually a really clever way of getting that effect.
Thank you, yeah. It was certainly like a cheap-ass cosplay. It wasn't anything spectacular, but
just paint your face like a skeleton, right?
A creative use of it, at least, yeah.
Yes. And do you have any favourite like Halloween like sweets or like the way they make food? So I remember once I went to, I forget which restaurant did it, but I've had one of those like black squid ink burgers. Do you know they dye the burger jet black? So it's like, ooh, it's a scary witch burger. And they're quite nice because the squid ink does add a bitterness to it, which does work well with some flavour profiles. So I did enjoy that.
I mean, it's one thing that we did occasionally as like, I helped my mum with it when I was like maybe like a young teenager, but my mum always liked to make an effort for Halloween and trick-or-treaters coming around and stuff. And a couple of times we did it where we did like spaghetti in like tomato sauce with some mince and stuff and cooked that up and made it as if it was like brains and stuff.
Oh,
and, like,
that's a classic, right?
Wrap everything up in like waterproof bags or like little zip bags or whatever. And people do trick or treat by like putting the hand into like the blood and the brains and the guts. So that was always fun.
I thought you were going to say that your mum just gave people like a little bag of mince to take up with them, which is like such a weirdly specific thing. But it's like, I've seen those ones of people like dip like potatoes in caramel and pretend it's a candy apple and give that to people.
Oh, God.
Which trick or treat, right?
You know, just a disclaimer, we never gave anything unsealed to people.
No.
It was just, do you want to dip your hand into the blood and the guts to like get your sweets out?
Get
and
your
they were
sweets,
like sealed up in a bag. But just, remember, don't accept anything that isn't in like a sealed wrapper.
Yes,
from people during Halloween. Don't let your kids eat any of that.
But also at the same time, remember that all the stories about there being razor blades and drugs inside Halloween candy are complete bullshit. It has never happened, ever, except for one case where it was a father poisoning his own child. And he blamed it on Halloween candy. So do you know that story you hear every year of like, people are intentionally poisoning Halloween sweets?
Mm-hmm.
It was a dad who poisoned his own son and blamed it on Halloween sweets. So when you hear people saying that, they're repeating the lie of a child murderer. That was instantly debunked by the police when they realised, who the fuck would do this?
I remember not long ago when, I think it was when weed got legalised in a lot more places in America.
Yes.
And there were stories going around of like, look at these like sweets that are actually, they've got, I can't remember what the active ingredient is, but they're little weed edible gummies, right? And basically, it's like these tiny little sachets of sweets that are like the little fun size ones that you'd get for Halloween, and they are similar looking, but they probably cost 30 times the price, and people
they're
that's
going to
what always goes around, isn't
it? Because every time that goes around, like, oh, I got weed gummies in my kids' Halloween sweets. Like, everyone who knows what they cost is like, no one. Drug dealers don't even give these things away for free. Like, no one is giving your kid $30 weed gummies.
Yeah.
I imagine that may have happened by mistake. At some point,
sure
it has to have done. Law of averages.
Someone might have got high and accidentally given out like a packet by accident.
Yeah, but no one is going to the store and buying like hundreds upon hundreds of dollars worth of drugs to give away for free. Do you understand how drugs work? It's the same thing with like poisoned like Halloween sweets and candy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying candy because we have a primarily American audience, but
yes,
I found myself doing that earlier today as well. I was in the shop with my mate. And I was like, I need to pick up some Halloween candy. And he looked at me and went, you mean sweets? I went, oh, fuck, did I do it again? Because I interact so much with like American media, and we have a primarily American audience, and I have to write in the American voice.
Yeah. Yeah, I find myself doing it quite a bit and just getting called out by like friends and family. I'm like, I'm sorry, okay?
I am so sorry.
I talk to a lot of American people, okay?
But yes, so is that like the fondest memory you have, like making like the fake blood and guts? Because I know that's a classic American staple, right? Of like, oh, put your hand and feel the brains, and it's spaghetti.
Mm-hmm,
right. Or like, oh, this is guts, and it's like jelly with bits in it and stuff.
I always enjoyed doing gimmicks like that, and I kind of got upset 2 years on the bounce for doing my own trick-or-treat things, because like 2 years ago, we got like some little Day of the Dead masks.
Yes.
And they were just like cheap little ones, and it was just when kids knock on the door, I'm going to put on the little Day of the Dead mask, and I'm going to hand out the sweets, and we had like Halloween coloured lights with all like using like, you know, small light bulbs.
I'm excited for it this year, yeah, because it's the first year in my own place, so I'm excited. It's like, I want to be known as that house. Oh, got that house. That guy gives out lots of sweets.
But like one kid was really young, and I answered the door with the mask on, and he immediately started crying.
Oh god.
So I was like, oh no. And then last year, I decided to not wear the mask because I accidentally scared a kid like the year prior. And then as someone was coming up the drive, I heard the parent go, oh, it's this house. And then I opened the door, gave them the sweets. And bear in mind, I had Pokemon cards last year.
Yeah, I remember you did that. You bought like those
the trick-or-trade little ones, yeah. So I was proud of giving away like sweets and Pokemon cards to everyone. Yeah. And then just as they were walking away, I heard them go, oh, we didn't wear it this year. I was like, oh no! It's like, you can't win.
Well, I see, last year for Halloween, because I lived in a flat, what I did is, cause there's no way, I didn't think anyone was going to knock on my door. Because there's not many kids in my building, because it's like apartment block for like young professionals. So there's like, I think like 3 people had kids. What I did is I put like a big bowl of sweets outside my house. And I came back one evening after like, a few drinks, and the bowl was upside down and someone had taken all the sweets. Like, clearly someone's gotten drunk and stolen all the sweets. So I went and refilled the bowl. Next day, it happened again. Okay, and I've had one more bag. Put that in the bowl, put it back outside. I'm glad I didn't steal the bowl, which is nice. And then, like, just the day of Halloween, I got a letter through my door saying, I'm so sorry, it was me.
Oh.
So someone had just apparently just seen them, just taken them all.
Because, like,
at least they apologised.
I remember you saying a little while ago that you got, like, a note going, like,
yeah,
thanks.
That was during the pandemic, for Halloween. Yeah. Me and my missus at the time put like a huge bowl outside and a sign saying like, Happy Halloween, take one. And that's a tradition I've just carried on of like, rather than taking stuff, I just do the American things, leave a big bowl outside my house.
Yeah, because to clarify what I was saying there, like Karl one year got like a letter through the door going like, oh, not many people around here like put sweets out, thank you. Yeah. My kid was really happy. Like,
yeah, I did it at Christmas as well with like candy canes. Like, I just went and bought like 50 candy canes and just left them outside the house. This is that thing of like just a little bit of whimsy and cheer, right? If you people, and because it's like an apartment block that I lived in at the time. It's not like if it was on the street, but like everyone who lives there is in the building. And I think just someone must have got drunk and just taken them all, and then they apologised. But then I said like the one year was like the parents with the kids of like, oh, my kids are really happy to see like a bowl of sweets outside.
But Karl, speaking of that, you've got your little spooky food theme today.
It's not spooky food theme, but it's it was inspired by the idea of Halloween style food where all they do is just dye it a different colour.
Okay, yeah.
So the wiki I brought for this week for the discussion is, Lucas, pink sauce. And are you familiar with pink sauce? This is not like, like the sauce you'd use for like prawn cocktail or something. This is a brand called pink sauce.
Okay, so it's not like, a
Heinz type of
ketchup,
sauce. No, it is a brand.
Obviously Heinz ketchup, a lot of people call colloquially just red sauce.
Yeah.
So I thought it might be like, they've changed it up for like Valentine's Day or something. No,
this is a brand known as pink sauce.
I'm not familiar with it then, no.
Okay, well I thought you might be because you're more familiar with TikTok than I am. Because it's like originated on TikTok.
Right, okay.
And Lucas, if you're not familiar with it, let's go through the wiki now, shall we? So, pink sauce is a pink dipping sauce created by TikTok user Veronica Shaw, better known by her screen name of Chef Pie. Food safety and labelling concerns caused Food and Drug Administration officials to stop production and online sale of pink sauce. A recipe change and a partnership with the company Dave's Gourmet later brought it to store shelves in 2023. And this is a fascinating story of just, speaking of internet success, of a meteoric rise to success, controversy, and then a person absolutely refusing to acknowledge said controversy. It's got it all.
It's got Milkshake Duck written all over it.
It is a classic tale of just hubris with someone on the internet who got way too famous, way too fast, and didn't know how to deal.
Mm-hmm.
There was too many eggs in that basket, and they're like, well, I can carry this basket. What's the problem with all my eggs in this basket? Oh, no, my eggs!
Turns out the basket had, a massive hole in the bottom of it.
Also, do you want to explain the term milkshake duck? 'Cause that's a very online term.
It is a very online term, and I know the vague thing about it, but basically it's just like, that kind of memification of the idea of an internet celebrity comes out of the woodwork, and it's like, all of a sudden everyone loves Milkshake Duck.
Yeah, internet darling. It's flavour of the month, literally in this case.
And then all of a sudden it's like the constant cycle that happens in nearly every single situation is to, it turns out that Milkshake Duck is a hidden bigot. And
yes.
then Milkshake Duck is really problematic.
Yeah, so it started with a viral tweet. I think it's it's Internet Boat. Pixelated Boat. I was getting confused between Internet Hippo and Pixelated Boat. They're two accounts that go viral and create many viral internet terms. And the original tweet is something to the effect of, the whole internet loves Milkshake Duck, the duck that drinks milkshakes. 5 minutes later, we regret to inform you that Milkshake Duck is racist. And it's a reference to the fact, as you mentioned, a lot of internet celebrities and flavours of the month will rise to prominence, and then almost as quickly as they rose to prominence, be outed as an awful person now that there's a renewed focus on their activities. And as soon as that veneer or the interest in their initial success fades, people start looking into, okay, what else are they up to?
Mm-hmm. Apart from this one funny TikTok video or meme or tweet or whatever that went viral, what are they providing other than that? And it's they're just a right-wing nut job shouting slurs online. It's like, right, great.
Let's just look through internet history. Control F N I, and you can fill in the rest. And most internet, it's bad, right? But
it is.
We're not there yet. So, history. Chef Pie revealed the pink sauce in a TikTok video on June 11th, 2022, and subsequently began fulfilling orders for the sauce. And this is the thing of there are plenty of creators out there who go viral, like artists and stuff when they create jewelry or clothing. Mm-hmm. I know they go viral. Sometimes people dressmakers and stuff like that, or maybe go viral for a recipe. You'll notice here, Lucas, that this is food that they are bottling and selling, and there is a big difference between selling, say, a t-shirt or a recipe than there is when you're selling actual perishable food. Mm-hmm. That you send in the mail.
Yeah, there's all of a sudden a lot of food safety and hygiene concerns,
which are there for very good reasons. And I'm reminded there was a video that went viral the other day of here's a person complaining about sushi's terrible because they never had sushi, so they ordered it on the internet and got it delivered to their house, and they got sent sushi in the mail. Yeah, and they opened it up and then complained that the sushi was bad. It's I not trust Uber Eatsing sushi to my house.
I want the sushi to go from its refrigerated state to my mouth within like 5 minutes, right?
As quickly as possible, yes.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of rules when it comes to selling food, which seemingly Chef Pie was not familiar with, because the sauce went viral on TikTok in the summer of 2022 with the hashtag Pink Sauce, gaining over 80 million views. And then this is where the milkshake duck happens. It got really popular, and then suddenly everyone's like, okay, this thing's trending. What's actually in this? So, customers noticed inconsistencies in the ingredients list provided, with many raising concerns that the sauce, due to its way it was made and its ingredients, may cause botulism. Which is not a thing you want food you're putting into your mouth to cause.
I don't know what that is, but I remember that it's not a good thing.
Well, it's just the word. Even if you're not familiar with it, you probably heard it on like crime or medical dramas, right? Of shit you don't want to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And since we're on Wiki Weekends, we can just click on the blue link to botulism and just say botulism is a rare and potentially fatal illness caused by botulinum toxin, which is produced by the bacterium Clostridium botulinum.
Right. So deadly food poisoning, essentially.
Yeah, it's real bad.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. There's a reason why there's lots of rules about when it comes to selling food. Like I said, you can sell a recipe, you can sell a t-shirt, you can print off some artwork. When you are making food, and as well, the inconsistency in the ingredients list, because Chef Pie didn't provide a clear and concise ingredients list, or an accurate one.
Right.
Which again, you're not allowed to do that. TikTok users also pointed out that the sauce was not approved by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, which again, if you want to sell a product, and if you want to go onto eBay and sell your Pokemon cards, that's fine. If you want to go onto eBay and sell 500,000 Pokemon cards, you're going to need to apply for a sales license or whatever. I'm not sure what it would be in America.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like, if you are just making sauce for your friends and family, that's one thing. If you want to bottle it, brand it, and sell it online and post it to people, there's kind of some rules and regulations that you need to follow, so people don't get botulism.
Yeah, I was going to say, rightly so. Oh, dear.
And thoughts so far, Lucas? Because that's all we've heard so far is just like, the basic history. We've not got to the section labelled controversy.
Yeah, because killing people is not controversy, apparently.
Well, this is just the history of the sauce.
Yes, yeah, and it's bad, right? As we say, there is a reason for all these laws and regulations and FDA approval needed and stuff. Like, the moment that you go to selling items as an actual seller to people, like when it is food products, you need to be super fucking careful, and you need to disclose very accurately exactly what is in it.
Yeah, because people might be allergic, or just in some cases, it might be an ingredient you're not allowed to sell in that particular market. Like, for example, Americans, a lot of your food is literally not legal to sell over here. And like my ex, who I mentioned previously, with like Halloween sweets, she brought back some candy from America. And to show her, I pointed out how American Skittles are differently coloured to British Skittles and European Skittles, because the colourings used to make them really vibrant in America are not allowed over here. So the Skittles are less vibrant. They taste the same, but it's the colouring they use is not allowed to be used over here.
Yeah, and it is just one of those things, right? Of like, a lot of it is literal just you use preservatives or colorants or something like that are not allowed to be used in European food.
Or not allowed to be used in the quantities that they are, or used in tandem with this, or not allowed to be used without being disclosed clearly on the labelling. Same like calories and stuff like that, right? You have to display calories and stuff clearly.
I think
over here, at least.
One like easy example to explain, I guess, is the fact that when like Brexit and shit went down, they were trying to change food laws in the UK, and one of the things that they were trying to get approved is the sale of chlorinated chicken, which
does improve the shelf life of chicken. In America, so big, you kind of do need to add more preservatives. But in the UK, where it takes less than a day to get from one end to the other, there's no need to add such preservatives to your chicken, unless you're trying to cut costs, which is probably...
it would mean that like we could import more chicken from America and things like that as well,
rather than the place that you can literally see. You can see France on a clear day.
Yeah.
So rather than get a chicken from there, where it's nice and fresh, and it can just be chilled. It doesn't need to be covered in chlorine. Let's ship it in for America, covered in chlorine, because it's cheaper.
So yeah, that's just like one easier to explain example rather than saying like just generic preservatives. It's like, yeah, they were trying to get chlorinated chicken approved for sale over here. I believe that didn't go through in the end.
I think just the word chlorinated chicken alone is enough to put most people off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but either way,
that
so
is
the product,
something that, I was just saying that is something that's available in America, but not over here.
You can also, as well, like I said, just go look up examples of the difference between the same products in different markets. Like I said, candy is a really popular one because candy is so chock full of preservatives.
And an easy to see one is the difference between Fanta orange.
Yes, because Fanta is so orange in America, and it's still orange over here, but it's nowhere near as orange as American Fanta.
But it's a very yellowy kind of colour over here because that's the colour that orange juice comes out of oranges.
Or at least orange juice that's been watered down slightly.
Well, I mean, even orange juice that you just squeeze from an orange is
it's
pretty
not
yellowy
bright
colour.
orange, right?
Yeah.
They don't put as many colourings in it. I remember it's Mawam. I remember Americans really get confused by Mawam.
Mm-hmm.
Mawam, I believe it's German, made by Haribo or some company like that. But
that sounds right, yeah.
It's sweets that don't have colouring in them, but it has flavouring. So, for example, like an apple Mawam and a Coca-Cola Mawam will look exactly the same, so they're the same colour, because there's no colouring in them, but the flavour's different. And that apparently confuses Americans. And they're like, wow, they all taste different, but they're different colours. It's like, yeah, because the colour is added after the fact. And this company realised that, well, it's a completely pointless ingredient. It makes the product less healthy, even though it's sugar, really. But still, you're adding like an unnecessary ingredient. Plus, as well, like, it's harmful and means it can't be sold in some territories.
Mm-hmm. And yeah,
either way.
The only real difference is like the little fleckles you see inside the Mawam. Like, it's very hard to notice.
And Mawam's one of my favourite, I don't eat many sweets, but that's one of my favourites for that reason. It just feels a bit better than when there's not at least artificial colouring in it. It's like, there's plenty of other artificial shit in there, but at least there's no artificial colouring.
And as well, just, they're very flavourful.
Yeah, they're
really
nice.
flavourful, yeah.
But it says here, the product was revised for safety purposes and went back on sale on July 1st, 2022. It sold out sometime around August of that year. Chef Pie planned to mass-produce the sauce in the fall of 2022. And it mentions here, this is a incomplete ingredients list. I'm just going to go through it now, Lucas, and just, after I'm finished, you tell me which of these ingredients you feel is not conducive to mass-producing and bottling a sauce. That's going to be on store shelves at room temperature. So, the ingredients list includes, but is not limited to, water, sunflower seed oil, honey, distilled vinegar, garlic, dragon fruit extract, pink Himalayan sea salt, dried spices, lemon juice, milk, and citric acid.
Oh dear.
So which of those ingredients, Lucas, do you think is not really that suitable to be kept at room temperature? And which of those things would you not want to be sent to you through the mail?
I mean, I have zero clue in terms of the dragon fruit element, but obviously, like, the big red flag is milk.
Milk, yes. And you can put, like, powdered milk.
Mm-hmm.
Like, powdered milk's a thing, but if you want to make an ingredient... And that's the thing, if you're making a small batch, you probably would put just fresh milk in there, right? Because you're going to make it, mix it up, keep it in your fridge for a couple of days, and presumably use it all.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to put it in a bottle, and then send that bottle in the post, it's going to be at primarily room temperature, if not a little bit more, because it's going to be in the back of a car or a van.
And that's the thing is, there's one thing if you're distributing it out to like a supermarket or something where they're going to keep it refrigerated in the vans and, across the entire different distribution, like, pipeline, whatever you want to call it.
Which you can do. You can keep something refrigerated during the entire production process. That costs money.
Yes, and I was going to say, more than likely, if you're just selling through like a TikTok shop, you're probably not doing that. You're probably going through just regular mail or courier services.
Yeah, and you're probably making it in your kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't imagine that your safety and cleanliness standards are as high as they would be in a factory that handles food.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a few friends who work in this. We've got a mutual friend who works in the food industry.
Mm-hmm.
He works for a chocolate manufacturer in a capacity, and he's talked before about how stringent their like safety and like health guidelines are, to the point where if you go into the factory, they have separate factories that handle nuts and factories that don't. And if you go into the factory that handles nuts, you are not allowed to go into the other factory. You have to change all your clothes and go in, and you have a sign put around your neck. You've got to change your clothes before you're allowed into the factory to avoid cross-contamination. I'm imagining that she probably didn't do that in her kitchen. I'm imagining that she didn't, or like, seal all of her covers. I'm imagining that, say, if she dropped a glass. You worked in like the service industry, Lucas. So when you drop a glass in a kitchen, it's like all food within 2 meters has to be disposed of. Which sounds extreme, but it's like, would you want glass in your food? I'm glad it's that extreme, because if it wasn't, there'd be broken glass in food all the time. I imagine she didn't adhere to things as stringent as that.
And that's the thing, right? It's just even in terms of you don't know how fresh every ingredient that they're using are. You don't know how much they're just wiping down the sides and washing their hands during preparation and stuff. Yeah,
because there's no one telling them to. And then we have controversy. So, the sauce garnered a lot of controversy due to food safety and labelling concerns. Customers noted that, for example, the sauce's colour varied between batches. So it's called pink sauce. Do you want to hazard a guess at what colour it's supposed to be?
I'm guessing that it's kind of like a light pink, kind of like almost as if kind of sauce that you'd have with like a prawn cocktail or something.
Well, it varied. And that was the issue. And it varied to such an extent that when packaged on shelves, and I'll send you the image now, Lucas, on Discord, you can see that it's different between bottles from the same batch in the factory.
No.
And here's the thing.
Like distinctly different shades.
Not even like a little bit. And here's the thing. When I go to a store, if I bought like a cookie from a baker's and the cookie was different from another cookie they sold me, I'm okay with that, because if they're making them by hand or whatever. When something gets to the point where it's mass-produced, I want as little variation between the products as possible.
Well, a good example is Heinz tomato ketchup.
Yep.
If you notice, the bottles that they give out and distribute to restaurants, they have a red border around the sticker.
Yes.
And that is perfectly colour matched to Heinz tomato ketchup, so that if someone fills up that bottle with cheap ketchup, when they've refilled it, you will see the shading difference. Yeah, that's how consistent the colour is of Heinz ketchup.
Yeah, it's as you said, it's so consistent that every label they produce is the exact same shade of red as their product, because they've got the manufacturing down to a science.
Yep.
It's say like Coca-Cola. I remember watching, do you know those how it's made things on Coca-Cola?
Oh, yeah.
They talk about how here's the factory that makes the cans. And they say that 1 out of every 3 million is wrong.
Wow.
Or something, it might be less, but it's like some ridiculously small percentage are wrong, because that's how precise the manufacturing process is and has to be profitable. And that's and we talked about the cleanliness standards and how stringent they are with health and safety guidelines, and how just ridiculously, just on it they are with cross-contamination. Because the last thing you want is to get fucking sued because someone eats your product, has an allergic reaction due to a item that is not disclosing the ingredients, suing the fuck out of you, and then that entire product line gets removed. Because that's what happens. If one batch is sullied, the entire product gets removed from store shelves.
Yeah.
And your brand takes like a 10-point dip on the stock market. So when you've got bottles on shelves that are next to each other and literally a different colour.
Yeah, I thought it would be a bit more subtle than the night and day difference in that picture. I'll get that picture up actually and put it on the video version.
It went viral a few times, and presumably people can find it now. And
the reasoning for on the video version, yeah.
And the reasoning for that is twofold. One, the product was poorly packaged, and two, it wasn't designed to stand on store shelves for anything more than a couple of days, which can be fine. You can have products that only last for a few days. Perishable products are a thing. And as a result, because they were mixed poorly as well, the ingredients would settle, which, again, is fine in a product, but...
Oh, that's a big picture.
From a visual standpoint, a settled product does not look nice. Right?
Not really, no.
No.
I'm trying to just shrink down this picture. There we go. We can just see this pink sauce. We can literally just see the massive changing colour between the front bottles.
Yes. And keep in mind as well, if you look at the label, I think in the screenshot that's from, they have other screenshots and they say they're all from the same batch, which is really concerning. And that's the result of said different settling. Because that's the thing, if you're pouring it out and it's like there's more of the dragon fruit extract, which is what gives it its pink coloration.
Right.
That if that's more right towards the bottom of the batch, later, even if it's from the same batch and it's mixed in the same thing. Sorry, I only
No, that's fine. Yeah, if like you're not currently mixing it as you're pouring it through properly, then yeah, a lot of the different things might settle in different parts of the mixing process, and just all of a sudden all the dragon fruit extract is at the top or at the bottom.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's fine if you're making like a small batch. But if you are making like a mass-produced product that you want to sell, you have to ensure absolute consistency, and you want the first bottle off the line and the last bottle off the line to be indistinguishable.
Again, that's why, as I say, Heinz Ketchup is able to say, this is the colour of our sauce to the exact shade of colour.
Yeah, or if you go to a McDonald's. If you go to a McDonald's in Addis Ababa and a McDonald's in Pontefract, where I'm from, it'll taste exactly the same. Because they have to ensure, like, they want anyone anywhere in the world to be able to buy that product and know exactly what it's going to taste like. Which is, like, an important aspect of brand building and also not getting sued.
Yeah, and obviously they have different menu items, but a cheeseburger in every McDonald's needs to taste the same as a cheeseburger in a different McDonald's.
And be made with ingredients that are, if not the same, have parity. Like, you might not be able to ensure you're getting beef from the same supplier, but you want beef held to the same quality standards. Anyway, other problems with the product included the fact that the sauce contained milk, which when packaged in a bag can be infected by botulism. And again, that's a standard way milk is transported for consumers. It's like, you've probably seen it's coffee shops as well. That's how a lot of coffee shops get their milk delivered in a bag. Because it's easier, because that way you don't have to pour it into a container, and then the container then has to be washed. If it's just in the bag, then you can just pour it straight out of the bag into the product, and then again, that's milk being used as it on its own. It's not being mixed into anything else and left to stand for God knows how long.
I also think it's a lot easier to do with like packing and shipping and stuff. It's a lot easier to be in bags, right? Yeah,
it's also for rubbish wise, like 20 plastic bags takes up less space than 20 plastic bottles. You can also either way. It's like there's when you're shipping 100,000 of something. Stuff like that starts to matter, less than when you're buying a pint of milk for your kitchen, for example. You mentioned that. There's other issues included discrepancies between the amount of sauce in the bottle and the amount specified on the label, which again is a labeling issue. Which, if you are just selling a small batch, or you're giving it away, or you're selling it on a farmer's market or something like that, that's fine. If you are mass producing a product with a brand name and your label says 330 ml of this product and it doesn't contain, I think the limit is within 5 to 10%.
Right.
You get in trouble. And obviously, it's a joke that a lot of products contain less, but what most businesses do is they find out what the legal minimum is, and then they get as close to that as they can without breaking the law. Which is fine. So, you can't ensure...
It's consistent.
Yeah. So if you have to be within a couple of % of, say, 1,000 grams, and you can save a little... Again, if you're making 1 million of something, and you could save, 3 or 4 grams of products, you make 1 million, that's enough to make several thousand more products, right? And this is something that's more stringent in the UK than it is in the US. And I remember blowing Americans' minds when I talked about how we do not fuck around with beer over here.
Yeah.
So when I went to America, I was baffled by how shit bartenders in America were. At least the ones that I interacted with were at pouring beer.
Oh, with the amount of head on a beer.
Yes. Yeah. And I remember a bartender, he poured me a pint and it had that much head on top. And I went to the bartender, "Oh, can you top this up, mate? There's too much head on that." And he looked at me like I'd just spat in his face. And the person I was with was horrified that I asked the bartender to do this. And when we went back to our seat, and went, "You shouldn't have done that." So, "What do you mean?" "Well, that's really rude." And I explained to them, "Well, look, you're not allowed to do that." And what? And they were baffled that I explained, in the UK, it is literally illegal to sell a pint. That shit. And it's the Weights and Measures Act. And I believe you've worked in service industry, Lucas. What is the limit you're allowed on the head of a pint?
I've not bartended before, so I'm not sure.
It's 5%. So 5% of the glass is allowed to be head. And that's understandable, because a beer needs to have that foam on top because it's part of the beverage as like profile. But too much of it means you're getting ripped off. You're paying for a pint. You are entitled to a pint of that liquid.
Yeah,
it's so strictly enforced that bars that underpour or do shit pours can get fined.
Like, technically, if you pour a beer badly enough, you could probably get half of that glass to just be all head.
Yeah,
or
and if you serve that to someone,
yeah.
Most bars don't, but and it's like the odds of like someone coming in and suing you are minimal, but it's still enough of like a deterrent that I've never been to a bar in the UK where I've asked them to top a pint where they've ever done anything. And go, oh no problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very regular thing, and also bear in mind as well, it's not necessarily just someone suing you, especially with the way that the world works now, where someone could just take a picture of a badly poured pint, say, leave a bad review on Google, and if that like happens to go viral or something, then like somebody else might take them up on the fact that they did that. It might not necessarily be that one patron.
Also, you don't even need to sue them. You can just report them to the government because our equivalent of the FDA will crack down on people who break the Weights and Measurements Act. It's like they do not fuck around.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like it not necessarily the person that bought the pint, but if the person takes a picture of that and puts it online and says which pub it is, then that might be seen by thousands of other people that might report them.
Yeah. And it's to the point where, like, there's a great Instagram account. It's an Irish guy who lives in London. And he just, every time he goes to a new bar, he orders a Guinness and he just takes a picture of it and reviews it. And just, like, the amount of shit Guinnesses this guy has gotten is unbelievable. And I remember speaking to someone from Guinness, because one of the things that they do, because, speaking of, like, absolute consistency in your brand image, Guinness, the company, frequently respond to pictures like that. If they see a picture of a really shitly poured pint, they'll try and do their best to find out where that pub is, because it looks bad on their brand if the beer is not poured properly.
Yeah,
and they will reach out to bars and give them some guff and potentially work hand in hand with the people at the government who handle this sort of thing to encourage the bar to train their staff better. And this sounds like a bit heavy-handed, a bit Orwellian, but ultimately it's to ensure that the customer is protected, because otherwise they'll be able to pour you a shit pint and there's nothing you can do about it. It's like, give me £5 for a crap pint.
I would also argue with Guinness, there's a lot of clever marketing behind it as well. It's not just...
It's in their interest to keep their brand mystique.
There's a lot of prestige behind the idea of a Guinness pint to the point where... Now, I don't know if you're aware of these little devices where you put them on top of the can. There's the
Surge that just shakes this a little bit.
The Nitro Surge Guinness device, and it is, according to Amazon here, it's £25 on Amazon, £30 at Tesco. So you're talking about £25-30 for a little device that you put on top of your Guinness cans to pour them better.
Yes,
and if I told you that for any other brand of beer, of you've got to pay £30 to be able to pour it out of a can properly, you'd say that's insane. But the people that like Guinness and are into the whole gimmick of the Guinness pint, they'll happily buy these things. Absolutely. I know plenty of people with these things.
Yeah, and this thing is how much of that is marketing and just the power of suggestion is unclear.
Yes.
So I've got a friend who insists, he's been to Ireland many times, he insists that the best pint of Guinness is poured in Sheffield in a bar called the Church House.
Oh,
he contests is better than the pint he got in Dublin, next to the Guinness brewery. How much of that is true, or how much of it is just that's his favourite bar, that just happens to be his favourite pint, and it's his favourite pint instead of his favourite bar with who I hope is one of his favourite people, and how much of it is just the marketing of letting him down. But it speaks to the fact that these companies don't want their product being represented poorly. And in regards to the Weights and Measures Act, my favourite example of this is the Baker's Dozen. And this is how ingrained in British culture this is. This goes all the way back to the age of kings and queens. We still have a king, but when the king and the queen actually could sentence you to death for ripping people off. And what's your familiarity with the Baker's Dozen?
So it's something in my brain that I'm not 100% sure of, but in the back of my head, it's that you would basically have to clarify as a dozen, you would have to like meet a certain like weight requirement or something.
Yep.
When you baked a dozen of something, and just to make sure that they hit that baker's dozen target, because bakery is inconsistent, they would just throw an extra one in to make sure they definitely always hit enough.
Yeah, it's exactly that, yeah. And the reason why they throw the extra one in is because the punishment for... So the way it works is, as Lucas said, if you buy, say, a loaf of bread has to weigh a specific amount. In the UK, it is 800 grams. You can go check this. Anyone at home, like in the UK, next time you go into a store, you'll notice even though all the loaves of bread are different sizes, check the weight. Every single one weighs exactly 800 grams.
When it's a standard loaf.
A standard loaf, yeah. And you get a half loaf, which is 400 grams. But almost every loaf on the shelf, unless it's like a small batch, which the rules are different, but every single one will weigh 800 grams. And that's because it used to be a kilogram, but then they changed it during World War II for rationing. And they said, like, and it's, again, to stop people from getting ripped off, they said every loaf of bread has to weigh at least 800 grams. And that became the standard, because otherwise, cause I think businesses were trying to, like, and it has to have a certain, like, content. People would, like, try to bulk them out of, like, sawdust and stuff, and they'd, like, try and, like, take a slice out so it weighed less, so they could save money and still sell it as a full loaf. So the government says, well, no, a full loaf is 800 grams, and that goes all the way back to when you bought, like, I want to buy a dozen rolls. Well, it has to weigh this much. And if it didn't, they could be fined, arrested, or, like, severely reprimanded. So bakers would just chuck in an extra one just to make sure.
And yeah, it's just, like, for fear of, as you say, like, fucking getting arrested and shit like that, or getting, like, locked up, put in a dungeon somewhere for, like, not giving out enough
bread
of the bread in a dozen, yeah.
But you think, and it sounds ridiculous, but then you think to yourself, if there wasn't they wouldn't need such harsh penalties if businesses didn't have such a massive incentive to rip people off. And that's why, like, you know, it sounds stringent until you realise if you didn't have these in place, businesses would absolutely just take the piss.
Yes. And the only reason we've gotten to this point is because people have, like, pushed so far that there needed to be pushback.
Yeah, and that's why I said, like, with the not labelling your product properly is a big fucking no-no. Because the customer is entitled to know exactly what they're buying. And for a lot of businesses and companies, they really don't like that. And I remember the pushback of after, what was it, Super Size Me went, like, super viral. Despite, you know, the issues and misgivings with its methodology, after that point, there was a push for, okay, McDonald's needs to start telling you how many calories are in their products more clearly. And McDonald's pushed back hard on that, because they realise if they tell people how bad their products are, people are less likely to buy them. They want customers to be less informed, which is probably not a good thing, right?
And
they want to disempower you.
The exact same thing that we see with, at least in Britain, I don't know what the laws are like elsewhere, but in Britain, when you see food products, you have to have, like, the different things, like the sugar content, the salt content, the calorie content, in little, like, colours of red, green, or yellow, depending on how much is in there. And it's, like, basically, then they shift it around by being like, well, if there's a lot of bad things in here, then we're going to say that this one tiny item is actually meant to be 4 portions. And
and that's another thing which, you know, companies love doing, but advocates for consumer awareness hate that. And so if anyone's ever looked at a product, like, you get like a bottle of Coke, a 500ml bottle of Coke, you look at it and it says 2 servings in 1 bottle of Coke. And because they say it's technically 2 servings, they're able to put, I think a can's 1 serving, because it's diet.
I have it here on my Pepsi Max.
Oh yeah, you can see,
You can just see there. I'll try and, like, cover up my face so it focuses on it. And it's like, that's a 330ml can. So just 1 standard little can. And it says that this is typical values per 100 ml. So that means there's 3.3 servings of what these little green labels are in 1 can.
And it's called the traffic light system. I believe they have something similar in America. And basically just, if it's green, it means it's okay. And that's why I said, like, sometimes you'll see a product like a sandwich, it's 2 servings. And because they say it's 2 servings, they can say it actually contains less fat than it does.
Yeah.
And you have to read the small print to see, no, this sandwich only has 300 calories in it. No, It actually has 600 calories because technically the sandwich is 2 servings.
Mm-hmm.
And that is annoying, and it's something companies deliberately do because they legally don't have to tell you the exact caloric contents of their entire product. And the fact that even when they're told that you have to tell people how many calories this thing contains, they still try and wangle it to make their product look better than it is. Shows why we need the rules in the first place.
Because you don't want to look at a sandwich and see red, 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 red.
Although I do like that. Have you seen the guy who does that with his meal deal, where he tries to get the unhealthiest meal deal possible?
As many little red marks as possible. So that's the thing, right? It's like, those ones where it's like the breakfast triple sandwich with like bacon, egg, sauce, sausage on it. It's like, yeah, they split that up into like 3 different servings on the label because they know like, this has got a lot of salt and calories in it.
Yeah. And you know as well, the people making those products absolutely hate the fact they have to tell people it's bad for them because it makes people less inclined to buy it. And as a result, if they weren't forced to, they wouldn't. Because why would they? It's like a reminder of in America with cranberry juice. The actual representatives of like half the fruit juice manufacturers in the United States, when the government tried to introduce a basic common sense labeling system so people could visualize how much sugar is in a drink. So you often hear grams is a very abstract concept. You tell someone something contains 35 grams of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to visualize how much sugar that is, right?
And that's why a lot of people, you see like educational videos, they use like little cubes of sugar.
Yes, or teaspoons, because it's easier to visualize teaspoons. Mm-hmm. And they try to introduce something like that in America. And the people making like snacks and basically the entire food industry threw a shit fit and got that shit struck down. And their reasoning was so devilishly honest, but they worded it in that really smarmy, lawyerish way of, if people were aware of the makeup of our product, they'd be less inclined to buy it. Because they knew that, and it's something like, if this labeling system was allowed to go ahead, it would give people a too realistic an idea of the content of the product. Or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And all they want you to do is tell people how many teaspoons of sugar the product contained, because teaspoons is easier to visualize than grams. And
they just lose their shit, 'cause it's like, well, we're not allowed to let people know how bad this food is for them.
Yeah. So what's the thing, if they did, that's why teaspoons as a measurement is used by a lot of advocates, because it's very easy to visualize. And I think the example that always shocks people is you've got a kind of diet Pepsi there. There's no sugar in that, right?
If you this is can of Pepsi Max, which literally says 0 grams of sugar on it, which there's artificial sweeteners in here instead of sugar. I'm aware.
It's a different kettle of fish, but if you hold up that can right now, so everyone to see at home, and if everyone can visualize this, if that was a can of regular, just full sugar Coca-Cola or Pepsi, that would contain about 33 to 37 grams of sugar. That's the average for a can of full sugar soft drink. Do you know how many teaspoons of sugar that is off the top of your head?
Maybe 7.
It is, yeah. It's 7 to 8. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing: if I served you a cup of tea, Lucas, and I went and I put a sugar in it, that's fine, yeah. If I sat there and I spooned 7 teaspoons of sugar directly into that cup of tea and handed it to you, would you say that's too much sugar?
Yeah, and bear in mind,
absolutely right.
I have pretty big mug. That's a pretty sizable mug.
Probably akin to what you'd get in a can of soft drink, yeah?
About that, yeah. And I normally put maybe 2.5 sugars in my coffee, and some people make a comment about that.
That's too much.
That's a lot of sugar.
Which is why it's such a useful visual, and it's also why the companies making soft drinks fucking hate it. Because if you were able to visualize sitting there with your can of Coca-Cola and spooning 7 spoonfuls of sugars directly into it, people will be less inclined. It's like Copperberg, the cider.
Yeah.
So you don't have to label how much sugar is in alcohol, but you do in soft drinks. So when they made alcohol-free Copperberg, that company got so mad because they had to label that a single bottle of Copperberg contains 70 grams of sugar, which is 12 to 13 spoonfuls of sugar.
Oh, that's a lot.
It is. But you never realise it, because that's the thing, if they had to put on the side of the bottle contains the equivalent of 13 spoonfuls of sugar, you'd be less inclined to drink 8 bottles on a Friday.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Like, again, just if I sat there with my coffee
and put 13 spoonfuls of sugar in it.
Even the 7 that we talked about with like a can of Coke, full sugar Coke, like people would tell me I'm fucking insane.
But if you sat there and drank 2 or 3 cans of Coke over the course of an evening, no one would mind. But if you drank 3 cups of tea and each cup of tea had 7 spoonfuls of sugar in it, they say, you're probably having a bit too much sugar there, mate.
Yeah.
Which is why companies hate this system and campaign extensively against it. And it's also why you should always be an advocate for consumer awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone who ever dismisses it as like mollycoddling or the government overreach or Orwellian, it's like you are buying into the propaganda from the companies who their profits directly rely on you being uninformed.
And bear in mind, obviously, a lot of people watching this probably do remember, because we have generally an older audience, more around our age, like, rather than, a lot of kids watching or anything like that, to clarify what I mean by older than children.
Yeah, but around our age. Like, mid-20s to late 30s.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people will probably remember a time before going to a menu in a restaurant and being able to see the caloric content of each one.
Yep.
Whereas nowadays, like that, especially if you're trying to keep an eye on your weight or anything, that's incredibly helpful.
Or even just, a time before they tell you, does this product contain nuts? Like, advocates had to fight for companies to tell you when things contain nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't give a fuck if people died of a nut allergy. They cared the fact they had to reprint all their labels.
It's just one of those of like, I personally think it's great that I can go to a menu and know every time that I'm going to see how much calories is in every meal.
Yep, roughly, and there's...
Roughly, obviously.
It might vary a couple, but legally, it's only allowed to have, there's only, I think it's 10% is the industry standard, one way or the other. Because, your chef might give you a big spoonful of beans or put a bit more mayonnaise on your burger. Speaking of mayonnaise...
Exactly, yeah.
In regards to pink sauce, the allegations about the labelling also allege that the sauce contained ingredients which were not included on the label, some of which can cause allergy issues, like mayonnaise, which contains egg. And again, you're not allowed to do this.
Mm-hmm. And also, just again, if there is some level of egg or mayonnaise in that bottle, again, another terrible thing to not have refrigerated.
It's also, as well, it can not, you can keep mayonnaise on a shelf and it'll be stable. The moment you open it, though, that shit's got to go in the fridge.
I was going to say, that's the difference, right? Is mayonnaises, a lot of them can be stored at room temperature until the moment it's opened.
And as well, that mayonnaise is, because I know that friend I mentioned who works, not in the food industry, we've got a friend who works in the chocolate factory. He doesn't work, we say he works in a chocolate factory, it's funny. Another friend, he works as a manufacturer on the manufacturing end, and he's been to factories that sell and manufacture food. He said he went to a factory that made, not mayonnaise, but something similar to it. I think it was salad cream.
Mm.
And he said the entire factory was just refrigerated the entire way through. Every step of the way is refrigerated.
And salad cream is essentially sealed. Just mayonnaise, right? It's same with ranch dressing and aioli and stuff like that. They're all just basically mayonnaise.
But it's refrigerated to the point where the lid is sealed and it's vacuum sealed. At that point, the ingredients will be guaranteed fresh until that seal is broken.
Whereas I can't imagine that somebody just in their probably just in their regular kitchen at home is able to keep up to those standards.
Exactly, yes. And just that thing of, you can't not tell people what's in your fucking product. Because what about if I've got an allergy? And hey, you know what? Some people did have issues. For example, some consumers experienced food poisoning to the point of hospitalisation. Others reported that the product smelled and appeared rotten at the moment it was opened because they weren't vacuum sealed properly. Because the bottles weren't properly sealed and they were rotting on the shelves and you were getting the product. And again, if I bought a product and I got home and it was rotten, I am entitled to get that shit replaced. And that company, if they release a batch that is that bad, will have to issue a recall for everything sold between a manufacturing a certain point. So every time you go into a store, or sometimes you go into a store, they'll say this product is being recalled. If you bought one between this date, bring it back, we'll give you a full refund and a replacement.
Yeah.
They legally have to do that. They wouldn't if they didn't have to, but they legally do.
Of course. I just want to mention as well, one thing that blew my mind, not being very aware of, like, egg allergies, because I've not worked in a kitchen that used egg products, but I didn't realise that apparently people with egg allergies can eat eggs cooked in certain ways, but not others. Say, for example, I don't know exactly how it works, but, like, maybe they can eat boiled eggs, but not scrambled eggs.
Yeah.
And that is a legitimate thing, because apparently, like, the proteins break down differently depending on how they're cooked, where you can be allergic to a certain type of cooked egg.
It's why, like, allergies are a thing that just you need to be on the ball with them. Because they're so, like, some of them pretty general. If you've got a nut allergy, it's like, okay, just don't eat. But it's like, some people have a severe nut allergy where it's like, okay, some people I'll break out if I eat a peanut. Or other people, like, if I smell the fumes from a packet of peanuts being opened, I'm hospitalised.
Yes, yeah.
And you know what? If I was in that situation where that's how allergic to a product I was, I would want it absolutely enforced by law that every product sold on a shelf told me if it contained it or not. Right?
Yeah, right. And I feel very sorry for people with that level, because, like, I would be terrified to leave the house.
Exactly, but you know what makes it easier for them to, like, navigate the world in which we live? The fact that these rules are very stringent and that the punishments for ignoring them or flouting them are very severe. But you know what, Lucas? Maybe they're too severe, because we have here a response from Chef Pie. So Chef Pie claimed that, in response to the controversy, she had never weighed the product. So the discrepancy between the amount of sauce indicated on the label and the amount actually in the bottle was entirely due to her guesswork. And here's the thing. This is what I talk about of just fame going to someone's head of. That's an excuse you can use if you were, like, the girl behind the counter giving someone, like, I want half a kilo of mince. And they get it, and it's like, oh, you only give me 400 grams. Oh, I'm new. I don't know how to read the scales properly. Sorry. And the manager comes out and fixes it. You can't do that when you are the person selling the pre-manufactured packet that has a defined weight on it. You have to go, whoops, my bad, didn't weigh it. What do you mean you weren't weighing it?
And that's the thing, right, is if you're not doing something as simple as not weighing your food product that you're selling, what else are you skipping over?
Does that mean you're not weighing the products as you put them into the sauce? Does that mean each batch is just based on guesswork? Are you not properly measuring out the amount of products in each one? Are you adding ingredients that you're forgetting about because you just, I'm just guessing? Did you put a touch of an ingredient in that you forgot to mention because you didn't think it was important to mention? Because why would anyone give a shit? They might be allergic.
It reminds me of the story of, I'm sure you remember which band it is, but the band that said, like, no brown M&Ms or whatever.
Yeah, that was Van Halen, I think.
Right, yeah. And it's not the, like, oh, well, if this colour M&M was left in the bowl, it's a big problem. It was just, well, if you've skimped on this one thing we've asked you to do, what other things have you ignored?
Yes, so the story there is, I believe it was Van Halen, but their rider, which is the list, a band, a group, a celebrity sends to a venue, like, I need these things in my dressing room before I arrive, is what they would include is we need a bowl of M&Ms with all the brown ones taken out. And they would just use that as a litmus test, as you said, for if they read the rider correctly, because as a huge band with a lot of equipment, they had a lot of specific safety requirements for the stage. The stage needed to be like, it needs to be able to support this much weight, at least. It needs to be double fastened in this way. And that's not a thing the band themselves could check. And there were a lot of stories about bands who went to places where their stages weren't safety checked or didn't have enough, like, weight limit on them. And the stage would collapse with the band on there. So what they would do is just include a simple addition to their rider of, hey, you need to put no brown M&Ms in. And if they saw brown M&Ms, they knew that the rider had not been read clearly. So, as you said, what else have they ignored? If they ignored this very simple request, what about all the very specific technical stuff we've requested? Has that been ignored?
Yeah, and it's just an easy way for them to walk into their dressing room, very quickly visualize they have not fucking paid attention.
Yeah, it's like, hey, if you can't even bother to weigh out the exact amount of product you're putting into the bottle, what else are you not doing?
Because that's one of the most, like,
basic
things, right? Yeah.
It's like, that's why the Baker's dozen exists. Like, I'm buying this many, like, ounces of a food stuff. Okay, to make sure you've got enough, we're going to chuck an extra one in, because we don't want to be found lacking.
Yeah.
And the thing is, though, Chef Pie was also not happy that people were complaining that her product was not approved by the FDA. When asked about whether the product was approved by the Food and Drug Administration of the United States, she stated that since her product was not a medical product, it didn't need to be. Keeping in mind, Lucas, what's the first word in Food and Drug Administration?
Is it drug?
It's food!
And that's the thing, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of the FDA because it's like, is this medicine FDA approved? But you could see my reaction before you'd even finish the sentence if I knew exactly where that was going.
Yeah, so it's not a drug. And again, there are some things that you can, you don't need specific... Like I said, if you're selling a t-shirt on Etsy, you don't need to get specific approval. You don't need to get safety requirements done.
No.
But if you're manufacturing that t-shirt and you want to sell 8,000 of them, you probably do need to adhere to some safety rules. I won't know what the specific ones are, but for example, there'd be certain kinds of dye you would not be allowed to use. There'd be certain, fabrics you couldn't use. There'd be certain requirements for the stitching, for example. But if you are just printing your logo onto a t-shirt, it's expected that the t-shirt you're printing onto already adhere to a bunch of the regulations anyway, so you're not at fault or responsible for them. If you're doing the entire manufacturing process, you're kind of responsible for sticking to those rules. On October 2022, Chef Pie appeared on Karamo Brown's. I had my little pointer over the A in his name. Karamo Brown's talk show, Karamo, to address the controversies surrounding the sauce. She appeared alongside fellow TikTok user Ali Breen, a critic of the sauce who had sent a sample to the lab for testing. While the mistake in the labelling was acknowledged, Chef Pie did not address concerns over the shipment of perishable ingredients. Chef Pie criticised Breen for her commentary on the sauce and accused Breen of fabricating claims about her product to tear down Chef Pie's business and livelihood. The results of Breen's commission lab tests were never presented during the segment. Chef Pie's response on the show was met with severe backlash, and the episode was deleted. It's basically
it's a good sign when they just remove the episode.
It's basically someone who just got really famous really quickly and got criticised and is like, "What? Who the fuck are you to tell me what I can and can't do?" Not realising, hey, it's not about you; it's about safety.
Yeah,
it's not that you're just out there being singing a song. You're not like a music. You are selling a product to people, and people might be at risk. This is a problem.
And again, right, when it's something as difficult to work with as food, there are so many concerns with, perishable items and allergies and things like that, whereas, as you say, if it's just, a bloody t-shirt or something, that's very unlikely if you sold a bad t-shirt to be killing somebody.
No. And it's fascinating, though, to see the response, right? Then we have here FDA approval. So, on August 2nd, 2022, the Food and Drug Administration opened an investigation into pink sauce. Chef Pie requested and then received help from Dave's Gourmet. They are a company notable for producing Dave's Insanity sauce. So they produce the super, super hot sauce. So they're a company who presumably know a lot about bottling and making sauce and, adhering to FDA regulations. So what Dave's Gourmet did is they appropriately altered the recipe, production process, and the packaging to adhere to federal food and safety standards. The fact that she had to do that while being investigated means that she probably wouldn't have done it if she wasn't at risk of getting sued, which is why these regulations exist.
Yep.
Because she was more than happy to sell the product that was putting people in the hospital and reacted poorly to being criticised until the government's like, well, okay, let's see what's going on. And she realised she might be at risk of being fucking sued into oblivion by the government.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right, is people over and over again, time and time again, will show that they are willing to just sell whatever the fuck they want until they're called out and
Yeah, they will
until
do
they're threatened with like legal action.
They will do the legal bare minimum, and in some cases less than that. And we have a quote here from Chef Pie about the FDA. The fucking DA, federal, came to my business yesterday. I am 100% compliant. I am abiding with the FDA. I am not in trouble. I am not going to jail. Nobody can accuse the pink sauce of anything going forward. Which is a hilarious statement, considering that prior to that point, she was not working in compliance with the FDA. Which also just goes to show the internet, right, of how quickly you can change the narrative to suit your own agenda, and why it's always important to be aware that maybe, like, you know, someone recollecting the story from their own perspective might be tinged with a hint of bias.
It kind of reminds me of that great episode in Parks and Recreation where Mark Brandanowitz comes around and inspects Ron's woodworking shop.
Yes.
And he's just like, no, everything is fine. It's like, you don't even have a fire extinguisher near him, man. Like, what happens if something catches on fire? It won't. Trust me, everything is safe. It's like, no, it's not safe, and it could hurt you and other people.
Yeah, we talked about this on the Ayn Rand, where we mentioned, like, Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if this is in your own home, it's fine for, if, like, and Ron talks about personal responsibility. It's like, hey, when he says, hey, if I want to, like, you know, sit at home and eat shitty food and balloon to 300 pounds, that's my right as an American, which he's entirely correct about. But the moment that your freedom to do that starts infringing on the rights of others, it's like, hey, it's my right, and presumably it's all in America, hopefully it would be as well, that if I buy a product on a store shelf, it is my right that I can look at the back of that and know that list is accurate. I shouldn't have to send a sample to a fucking lab for analysis to see what the fuck is in this thing, because that is an unreasonable expectation of the average consumer.
Yeah.
And that's why that's why the rules and regulations exist, so that you don't have to do that and you can reliably expect the product to be as described on the label with some minor variation as allowed by law.
And same with just the way that it is prepared and handled and distributed.
You can ensure that everyone wash their hands, for example, right?
You would hope that buying an item with perishables inside of it has been properly maintained.
And will be safe to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be safe to eat. And the fact that you couldn't guarantee that is a big problem. And it's like, it's okay to complain about it, of like, oh, they're infringing upon my rights. It's like, but the rights you're talking about is the right to not make things
safe. The right
safe.
to, like, poison other people, essentially.
Like with the Ron example, where it's like, well, my shop's not going to burn down. It's like, but what about if your shop burns down and then it's taking time away from, like, firefighters who could be responding to this entirely preventable issue that might endanger someone else's life? Is that not infringing upon their right to expect a prompt and timely response from the fire department? Is it not your right, your responsibility to ensure that you do everything you can to ensure that public services and, like, you know, serve the public and don't have their limited resources stretched thin or wasted for something that is entirely avoidable with just a minor amount of thought from yourself?
I can't get over I didn't weigh it.
And just thinking that's an okay excuse. The fact as well, do you know they said that and didn't realise what the issue is? It's like, oh, your labelling issue's wrong. Do you expect, it's like, oh, it's a problem with the manufacturer, right? What you say is, it was a problem on the manufacturing end. If that was a company or someone with any amount of media training, which is why it's hilarious when it's like internet celebrities, they don't have media training. That's why so many of them are racist, or, like, you know, are just racist on main because they don't have that person saying, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
They don't have that highly polished, like, media sheen yet. And you know that was like... Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, they have not been told to, like, just go, sorry, is not good enough. Like,
if that was, like, a representative from any company, if that was a representative from Heinz, and that representative said, my bad, I didn't weigh it, they would be fired before they left the room. Because the first thing you learn in business is never admit fault. Because the moment you admit fault, and you that's it. We now have documented evidence of who's to blame. Never admit fault, ever. And the first thing she did is like, well, it's my fault, my bad. That's not, you can't use that excuse.
No, and the admission normally from a company, as people will probably be familiar with, is more along the lines of like, this is not meant to happen, and there will be an investigation to make sure that it doesn't occur again.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to say.
I didn't think I needed to weigh it.
Yeah, that is like, the polished media response you'd expect from a business or someone who is selling a product for money. But then we have Lucas, speaking of money. Finally, on August 16th, 2023, Chef Pie made a GoFundMe page, alleging that Dave's Gourmet did not pay her royalties for the pink sauce and that she was financially struggling, living off less than $20 per day and facing eviction. She requested $100,000 on this page. Dave's Gourmet, when asked for a response, said that they'd been paying her the contracted amount, which was $120,000 as of 2023, and provided receipts for this. In October 2023, Dave's Gourmet said it made further payments to Pie and that it was considering a defamation lawsuit. As of December 2023, no lawsuit has been filed, and Pie's GoFundMe received $25,000. So she did that classic internet huckster thing of, oh shit, claim I'm being cancelled, give me money, and then the company's like, no, we paid. Did you not read the fine? You think she'd have learned not to read the fine print, right?
The idea of publicly calling out a company for not paying you when you know that they did, it's yes, they're going to have evidence that they paid you, and they're going to show that evidence.
That's like the internet celebrity brain rot of, well, if they think of it as a beef with another internet celebrity of, well, I can just claim they're being a dick to me for clout. Not realising that this is a company you signed a contract with, and there are receipts. And when you accuse a company of something that is defaming, they will sue the fuck out of you. And there is no more information about this. I presume that she received a strongly worded letter from Dave's Gourmet advising her to shut the fuck up.
I would presume so. And I need to get into the fucking Source game. 120 grand.
Per year.
I wouldn't need to sell my background items if that was the case.
But it's more, I said, it's so emblematic of, I said, like just internet celebrity brain rot of course, what's the first thing people do on the internet when there's any sort of controversy? Just start shit-talking the other person to stir up the pot, right? To get more views and attention. Not realising Dave's Gourmet is not owned by a guy. It's owned by a guy named Dave, but it's not just Dave on his laptop doing it. It is a functioning business that presumably has lawyers and a brand that they want to protect.
Yeah, it's not just, I'm going to shit talk my mate Dave and say that he didn't pay me. It's, no, this is a company. They're going to, fuck you up for saying shit.
You can't also say they're not paying you when they can just say, here's the check for $120,000 we sent them last week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's pink sauce.
Wild.
What a great story, eh?
It is, yeah. And one that infuriates me.
It's also scary, right? That people are like, I'm scared that someone out there can just get that famous and sell a sauce that you can buy that they can just later go, whoops, I didn't measure the ingredients. Like if I went into a restaurant and I ate something, I went, because I'm not allergic to anything, but if I was, and I took a bite out of something in a restaurant, and I called the waiter over and said, does this contain any mayonnaise? For example. And they went and asked the chef, and the chef went, I'll fucking know. I would not be happy.
Even worse, if the chef said, sometimes.
That's even worse, right?
If the chef was like, well, sometimes I put mayo in it, I'm not sure.
That's just a restaurant. But apparently you can just do that and just apparently squint my bad.
Well, I mean, obviously, you can do that for a very limited amount of time.
But how long do you think that'd work for? How long could
Clearly
you get away with?
not very long before the FDA got on her ass about it.
I love the claim of, though, I've been working with the FDA the entire time when there is documented evidence that you haven't. And then when you were asked, you were like, the fuck's the FDA?
It's like, you can just see it from a mile off. The blame game of the finger pointing of just like, well, I've been doing my thing with the FDA. It's their fault. And then the immediate moment that's proven to be false, it's like, well, actually, it was Dave's Gourmet. It's their fault.
Yep.
they didn't pay me, and they've been causing all these issues. It's just, God damn it.
Good internet celebrity brain rot. I can't be wrong.
Apart from the whoopsie I didn't weigh it.
Which they think would be fine, because it's like, well, yeah.
And again, if this is just like you bottling up a couple of sauces and going down to the market and being like a little like small seller, you would get away with being like, sorry, I forgot to weigh it.
And that's the thing. If by any chance the FDA got involved, you'd probably get a slap on the wrist.
Yes,
unless someone died. But if someone got
that'd be different. Yeah.
But if someone moaned and said like your label's not accurate, and it's like said they probably okay, you're selling an unregulated food stuff. Okay,
like you've sold 20 bottles down at the market. Just be aware this is a thing.
Pay the $5 and get yourself like a fucking vendor's permit or something like that.
Mm-hmm. But when it's being like mass produced at this point,
when it's in a factory,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you're licensing out the recipe, and the recipe is all that I guessed.
I'd love it. If, like, just the balls of you check the pink sauce and you turn over the label and it just says ingredients I don't fucking know. I'd respect it more.
Ingredients,
just show up. It's some vague shade of pink.
You know, that's what the response
sure.
would be. They'd be annoyed that they had to do that.
Mm.
So, did you write it down in the exact amount? Why would I do that? Because
I just wing it every time.
You're selling it for money.
It's like, yeah, I'm sure when I cook at home, I just wing my ingredients. I'm sure I never get the exact same amount every time.
No, yeah.
It's roughly similar when I'm making the same thing, but it's never going to be exact. But if I was to then start packaging and selling that on...
Yeah, also as well, if while you're making your thing, it's like, oh, I'm going to buy, like, I don't know, a packet of vegetables. So, okay, I bought half a kilo of spuds. If you opened it up and there was one potato in there, and you called up the shop, or the potato, and they went, well, we just guessed the amount we put in. Like, no, he says half a fucking kilo on the bag. I want half a kilo of potatoes. Well, we just guessed. That's all right, right? We just guessed how many potatoes are in there.
Sorry.
You'd be mad, right? Anyone would be mad.
Oh, dear.
I thought that'd be a fun one. Pink sauce.
And I will be returning in a moment, Karl, because we will need to do a quick break because
no problem.
I need toilet. But I'm also going for a spooky but in a different kind of way wiki.
Yeah, and that's the, you know what, folks at home, like, maybe we can't do which wiki won this week, but you can just let us know in the comments which of these things you find scarier.
Mm-hmm.
That there are idiots out there selling food without properly labelling potentially allergy-causing ingredients, or what Luke is about to talk about.
And you'll find out what I'm about to talk about after this break.
Perfect. So we have returned, Lucas, and speaking of internet content creators, just plug in stuff. People can go to our Discord, our social media links, our Twitch streams to find content from ourselves, and also support us financially by going to the Patreon link, also found below. But there's not really much more to say beyond just, when we're back to doing things as normal, there'll be more announcements.
There will, including, the sale of Luke's special sauce.
Call it that. The OK sauce, let's go.
I forgot to, put it on socials or anything, but we were packing up stuff for the house and came across, just a very inappropriately named item.
Cheers.
And I'm just trying to remember exactly what it was called. I took a picture of it because it was just like, why did they... You could have just named it something else.
Something normal.
Oh, yeah, of course. It was the nut milk bag.
What's wrong with just, nut milk?
There's nothing wrong, literally.
You've got a dirty mind, not me.
I'm aware, but we literally drink oat milk and stuff like that. And that's the thing. We don't drink oat milk. We drink oat drink.
Yep.
Except very specifically, everyone calls it oat milk and stuff. It's always labeled oat drink.
Joe,
because it can't be classified as a milk.
Like dairy manufacturers, speaking of big companies, they hate that alternate milks are called milks, which is not technically milk. They hate that not because of a labelling issue. They just don't like how it's eating into their profits and how, when like oat milk and soy milk, it takes up real estate in the dairy aisle. Mm-hmm. So rather than compete with it, they just like complain to the government to try and get it not labelled as milk so they can't stack it next to milk in stores.
And it's one of those things where that might sound silly, but like big milk is genuinely a thing.
It's massive, yeah. It's like in America especially.
Yeah.
Literally like, $1 billion industry.
The whole like that I mean, it's probably an episode we should do at some point on Wiki Weekends or like on the podcast. Like the milk industry is a fucking superpower, essentially.
It is, yeah. Well, it's how they managed to get like dairy onto the food triangle. Do you know that triangle of like the food you're supposed to eat? Mm-hmm. There's a little thing at the top that says like dairy and sweets and stuff. That was never on there initially. It was the dairy industry the dairy's at the bottom. It's like one of the foundational aspects of your food alongside grains and fruit and vegetables. Initially on the initial sketch of the food triangle, it was whole grains, vegetables and fruit. Then the grain industry is like, put grains in there because we sell bread. And the dairy industry is like, we want to do that too. That's why it's dairy, grains, fruit and veg. Because they were going to be higher up, which would indicate less
importance, yes,
as opposed to a foundational aspect of your dinner. Same like the meat industry, but the meat industry didn't have enough money, so protein's slightly higher.
It's like calcium's good for you, but milk is not necessarily important. Like we are the only species that A, drinks milk from another species, and B, drinks milk past like nurturing age.
Yeah, I'd include cats in that because they drink like cow's milk stuff, right? You saucer of milk for a cat, but
that's because we give them it though. They don't go and outsource cow's milk on their own.
But it's like the food pyramid was literally influenced by just which industries were biggest, and like the dairy industry, the bread industry, and the meat industry managed to get like, just because meat's not really that important, it's protein. It should be protein, but the meat industry like, no, make it meat. So you get protein from other sources, including the fruit and vegetables that are listed below. Now,
and obviously there was in America that massive like Got Milk campaign.
Yeah, which was started by the dairy industry.
It was like in the 90s or something. I think the popularity of milk was really starting to wane.
Yep.
And they were like, well, no, we need to make sure that this new generation of people like are aware that milk is this super important thing that you must be drinking all the time. Yeah,
they literally campaigned for the government to declare it a foundational aspect of your diet, even though 30% of the population can't drink it. Which would suggest it's not that foundational to a diet.
That's only because it's pasteurised, Karl, right?
Yeah, drink that raw milk, get that botulism down you. And then the other thing that the dairy industry did is, do you know what they're responsible for as well, inadvertently? Stuffed crust pizza.
Oh, so because they were trying to figure out new ways to use cheese, right?
Yep, because they were like, we've got so much, there's a surplus of cheese. So what they did is they had a meeting with the heads of Domino's, and this is a real. It sounds like a conspiracy. They had a meeting.
It basically is, though, right?
Yeah, they had a meeting with the heads of Domino's and Papa John's and stuff like that, and told them, figure out a way to use more cheese, or we'll stop selling you cheese. It's like, figure out a way to use more of it, or we won't sell you any. And if you fucking sell pizza for a living, that's basically that's a shakedown. So they invented stuffed crust pizza and double top cheese. Even though in America, do you know when you get like a 4-cheese pizza? A lot of the 4-cheese pizza in America is the same cheese. They just colour it differently.
4 portions of cheese, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't necessarily have to be 4 different cheeses.
Kinds of, yeah. Except there's a great episode of Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares where he does that, where someone's like, oh, we've got 4 cheese ravioli, and Gordon goes, okay, what are the cheeses? And the chef's like, I don't fucking know. And he pulls out the bag, because obviously it's frozen ravioli. And it's like the 4 cheeses are cheddar, 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 and cheddar. It's just like all different colours of cheddar. And Gordon's like, well, that's not 4 cheese pasta, is it? That's just cheese pasta. But that's the thing they can do. They can't. It sounds weird, like just the dairy industry threatened Domino's and Pizza Hut.
And anyway, we'll move on from food talk today, because there's been a lot of it. Well, Karl, we were talking earlier, and we obviously, I would hope that it was obvious anyway, that when we were joking that my background is gone because I've been selling it off, it's because I've been packing to move house.
Yes.
And I just thought, one of the many scary things of like life and adulthood is housing.
Yeah.
And just like, moving house.
Getting too real, mate.
Buying a house, like renting houses, all that jazz.
Landlords.
We've talked about it quite a bit this year because it's been affecting both of us. And just, I wanted to think of how can I incorporate houses into spooky season? So we are talking today about grand designs.
Wait, is that like the makeover show for houses?
So, yeah, Grand Designs is a British television series that has broadcast on Channel 4 since 29th of April 1999 and is presented by Kevin MacLeod. And I'm presuming it's a different Kevin MacLeod.
Not the guy who does the intro music for every YouTube channel.
Because, it must be a different Kevin MacLeod. He can't be that prolific.
That guy's a fucking G as well. He's a topic for another episode.
Mm-hmm.
I bought his entire sound library. Yeah, so
the
Kevin MacLeod.
musician is spelled it phonetically spelled like Cleod, right?
Yes, if you want to explain who Kevin MacLeod is, people might not know.
Well,
you've definitely heard
Karl,
one of his songs, though.
I can literally right now show people or show listeners what Kevin MacLeod is as I just stop playing our background music.
Yes, so he is a online content creator who just creates copyright-free music. He composed Two Finger Johnny, the Fact Fiend theme. He has inarguably one of the most prolific composers of the modern day, and he is an absolute fucking hero to every single content creator because he freely allows his music to be used in perpetuity for commercial purposes or not, and all you have to do is give him credit. You don't have to pay him. Just give him credit and you can use his music for free. And the guy's a fucking legend.
That's why you'll notice that in the description of every single one of our weekends videos, there's just a list of 8 Kevin MacLeod songs of just, that's all he wants. Just credit in the description.
And when
you just need to clarify that you are using his music. And you mentioned TikTok earlier. You were talking about a TikTok creator. Every single generic, the one that's used a lot on TikTok is Spinning Monkeys, I think it's called,
which is his, right?
But nearly every single just generic background song you see, if you notice the music used, it'll just be a Kevin MacLeod song nearly every time
because he's the only content creator who doesn't mind. There's a couple of other I think there's copyright-free streams and there's lo-fi hip-hop beats and stuff, but every now and again something gets filtered in that isn't non-copyright, whereas Kevin MacLeod has a blanket policy of you can use everything I create for free in perpetuity for any reason, just give me credit.
And also bear in mind that it's good music and there's an eclectic library of hundreds and hundreds of different songs spanning many genres.
Yeah, so when I took the hiatus from Fact Fiend, one of the things I did is I went, I'm just going to go buy. So you can get his music for free, but you can buy his entire archive for I think $20, and he sends you it in the highest possible quality. And he sent me the link personally.
Yeah,
legend.
And that's a different Kevin MacLeod. Okay. That is not the presenter Kevin MacLeod, who we are talking about, that hosts Grand Designs. But Grand Designs, Karl, the format, the episodes generally follow the regular format with small variations depending on the process of the build. At the beginning of an episode, MacLeod meets the clients embarking on this grand design project. He visits the site with them, discusses the plans for the building, and then a computer visualization or computer-aided design view is shown of the intended final house or building that they want to build.
Okay.
And generally the idea is that somebody has a grand design for a house that they want to build, or that they want to... It's either they build the house from scratch, a lot of the time it is that they are just completely renovating the house that they already have.
Yeah, and I would love it if they ran out of content for something. It's usually something, let's say, quite grand. Or they have an idea of I want I want a music, speaking of music, I want a recording studio in my garage. something grand like that. But I would love it if it's just some knobhead who's like, what I want to do is paint all the walls white. Some landlord, I'm going to paint all the walls white and buy the most basic IKEA furniture.
And that's one of the things where they go through a thorough process of like pitches with people who, and this is not, Channel 4 are not contributing to the builds of these houses. It's just, hey, do you want us to document
the process,
the entire process of you building this grand idea of a house?
Because it's very therapeutic. It's like I mentioned earlier in the video and the podcast, like how it's made. It sounds like such a boring concept when just explained aloud, but it's so cathartic. It can scratch a very specific itch for a lot of people.
Well, that might be cathartic. I wouldn't describe Grand Designs as cathartic.
It's more stressful than anything. It just puts you off buying a house, doesn't it?
That's why I talked about like the spooky aspect of it, because it always goes through, and they film each individual episode for years.
Yeah.
Because these are grand, like as I say, complete renovations or complete builds of grand ideas for houses.
Also, builders in the UK.
Weather, builders, unforeseen circumstances. There are a myriad of things which normally mean planning permissions and shit. Just, it goes from nearly every single time, it's like, we've got this great idea, look at this idea for our house, and it's like, a year later, well, things aren't quite going as well as we'd hope. Another year later, and there's so many episodes where it's like 4, 5, 6, 7 years in the making,
and it's just like the initial budget is ballooned to 4 or 5 times what it was previously, and they're just like, and you see them like age a decade in that 2 years. And
usually the family grows by at least 1, if not 2 or 3 children.
What else are you gonna be doing? You're not building your house, are you? Oh, fucking.
That is the general idea. It's just like, usually a couple will come to Channel 4 with a pitch for what they want to build, and then the episode will just be recorded over a series of months or years to show how the building of this house goes from literal start to end.
And here's the thing, is this a show you've been watching? 'Cause when I was in the process of buying my house, I watched, not Grand Designs, but a lot of like similar shows of property buying shows, just to get myself in the spirit and also maybe keep an eye out for any potential pitfalls. And the one that I ended up watching is the ones that it was so depressing, because it's the ones like, people buying houses at auction. I was like, this would be fun. Like, let's see, someone win at an auction, get a good deal on a house, and then see what they make of it. And every other episode is like, the people go in and go, well, it's not a great house, but it's got good bones, it's got potential. And this has been bought by, like, Kenneth. And he walks in, and then you see him walking out the street like a fucking knobhead. And it's like, he is an entrepreneurial landlord. You're like, oh, no. And you just see him go in. So what are you going to do with the property then? You're going to live here with the family? He's like, no, I'm going to knock all these walls through and put it into 6 bedrooms. And it's every episode is that, and it's like, oh, no.
See, this is the other kind of depressing of just watching these people have ideas for these amazing builds. And nearly every time I look at the idea and go,
pretty good.
Solid idea. Really cool plan for a house. And then as I say, it slowly declines to like, well, it's taken 3 times longer than we thought. The budget has like gone through the window. I remember one where it was like, oh, well, we've imported like these giant glass panels for a custom fitted windows and doors, and we've imported them from like Holland and spent thousands of pounds on these windows, and they're not cut right and they don't fit. And it's like,
so what are you seeing realistically? You're watching someone's dream die in real time.
Yeah. And sometimes,
the dream a little smaller.
End product is like, look, it's 4 years later and they've scraped through, they've begged, borrowed, and stealed, like, to get all of this extra money, and they finally got their dream home, and it's great. And then other times it's like, well, this man Dave spent 8 years on this house. The house isn't finished properly. he needs to now sell it off to recoup any costs he's got, and
his wife's
his
left
family's
him.
left him.
Yeah, his wife's
and
left
he's
him.
like, oh no.
It's like, it gets to a point, it's like when I was buying this place, I bought it all, and just like, I got into the house, and just like, I walked over to a cupboard door, and it wasn't fitted right, and I just looked at it and went, I don't even fucking care. I'm just glad it's over, I don't give a fuck.
Mm-hmm.
So many friends who bought houses and stuff like that, where there's like, when they first got it, they were like on the blitz of buying new furniture and painting walls, and I'll go around like years later, and I can see like there's a wall that's still half painted. So they can't be arsed.
Mm-hmm.
It eats away at your soul, doesn't it? It's one of the most stressful things. Like my online dating profile right now just says like, I was told buying a house is the single most stressful thing I'll ever do in my life. Care to prove me wrong? Because it was fucking every day. Just you wake up every day, and it's like, what have I got to deal with now? Is this what this show was? Was you watching it for hopefully a bit of catharsis, or just to set yourself up for like maybe this is what we've got to expect? Or
no, it's just a show that I end up watching every time I'm in like a hotel or something, right? Where
it's prime, like it's 10 o'clock in the morning before you got to check out viewing, right?
Or like it's 3 a.m. and half of the show, TV channels have like turned off their airing at this point, and
but you can go watch like BBC 3 Wales or something like that, plus like 6.
All 4 goes on all night, and it's just like reruns of Grand Designs, and I just sit there and watch it, and like it's fascinating TV, right? Because like there's so much drama packed into every episode, and I say a lot of them just follow a vaguely similar story progression, because a lot of it is just, hey, unlike, a project manager, we decided to set our goals I should say, unlike a good project manager,
yes,
they decided to set all of their goals and their timelines and budget and stuff to if everything went right.
Which is project planning number 1 is, okay, so how long do you think it's going to take? A year. Okay, add 6 months to that. Why? Life. How many people are working on this project? Well, 20. Okay, what are the odds in a year none of those 20 people are going to have a family emergency, a sick day, be hungover, make a mistake, and every additional person you add another week to the project.
And then when it's terms of building, this is a Channel 4 program where you're based in the UK, when most of the time the weather is probably going to be shit during fall and winter, and you're just not going to be able to build on certain days.
You can't lay bricks when it's raining, when it's wet.
Yeah.
Cement won't dry. Unless you want to cover it all up with tarpaulin, which you can do. That's another cost.
Mm-hmm. And it's just, as I say, a lot of these people are just people with a money and a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And
no clue.
Like, very little actual experience. And some people, admittedly, do have a bit more experience. They might be a builder or a project manager or something like that, and those generally go a little bit smoother because they have an idea of what they're doing. It's the same with, like, people planning the weddings, right? It's like most people aren't fucking events planners.
No. Which is why you get recommended to hire one. And everyone I know has been married, and every single person who hired an event planner has been, like, worth every penny. Because it's not that I have to, if again, you think a wedding. So, okay, well, I need to pick a venue. And the rest. But, okay, just picking a venue, for example. You've got to, okay, well, I want to go to a church. Okay, how many churches are in your area? I don't know. Who do you contact to get in a church? Who do you book? Your priest. How do you get your priest in? How many people does it seat? Are you allowed outside? What's the parking situation? I don't fucking know. Joe does an events planner, because it's their job. And they just come to you with, here are 3 options, pick one.
Yeah, and then, like, if you are having a church, then a venue wedding, like a lot of more traditional weddings do, like, how far is the venue from the church? How easy is the transport route for people who might not necessarily be driving?
Yep.
Like, things like that, and just it all exponentially goes out and out and out, where you've got, oh, well, all I thought you had to do is, like, get a priest, a venue, and a caterer. It's like, maybe a DJ or something. It's like, oh, no.
Well, it's the thing, it's like, where I mentioned, like, life. I said, if you've got 20 people working on a project, and you've got a year planned, what are the odds in a year those people aren't going to have something? Life's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Someone's going to get ill. Someone's going to have a family emergency. Their kid's going to get sick. They're going to get called out. They're going to have another job. They're going to just, forget something. And so it's just watching someone's dream die in real time as life just gets in the way.
Yeah, it says, following the build progress, noting any changes, hitches, or delays, the build frequently runs over budget and completes later than scheduled.
That's the other thing. So budget's always the worst one. Of just every time I watch a show similar to this and someone gives a budget, and you'll see the host because they must know. They'll go, a very ambitious budget. Like they never say outright, "You're fucking stupid," but they'll say ambitious or a conservative estimate of what the cost will be.
And that's the thing, right? Is it's presented by Kevin MacLeod here. We got 22 seasons running from 99 to current, and that's 159 episodes of current as of recording. Kevin MacLeod, I think, has been the presenter the entire time, so he's seen
a lot,
nearly 160 of these projects through, and by this point in season 22, when they're going yeah, we think we can do this all for $25,000, and he's like, yeah, we think we'll have it done in 3 months. He must be sitting there at times going, yeah, and his job is essentially a documentarian, the crew and him presenting.
And he doesn't want to interfere with the reality of the situation, right? And if you put his thumb on the scale, that wouldn't be fair, but also it wouldn't make for compelling viewing.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the thing, right? It's as I say, Channel 4 do not put budget into this. It is literally just, do you want your story documented by our team? And
everyone always thinks that, I'm special, I'm going to pull it off for... So, mention the TikToker who's like, well, my source is great, I don't have to follow the rules, or I'm great, so I'll know... What about all these unforeseen circumstances? Well, I'm so good that when they happen, I'll know what to do. Do you plan for these? No, it's fine. It'll be right. It's like, it's not going to be right. There are rules, there are laws, there are regulations, there are other people to consider here.
But yeah, you must have some episodes where, he's just stood there biting his fucking lip. Yeah.
Sounds
okay.
Sounds like a good idea. It's like those,
gonna do great.
Those, not redesign shows, but those design shows where it's someone, renovating a house or something like that. Like, oh, do you know what I think would look great? And it's bright red walls in my bedroom. And really? Bright primary colours in a... Sure.
It's yeah, you go for it. But does say here, Kevin MacLeod will often do a piece to camera concentrating on any unique materials or features in the house. He visits again once the building is made watertight and when the first and second fixes have commenced.
It's always going to be a mistake.
See, they know what they're doing project management-wise because they've got not just one set of fixes, but the second set of fixes already
to fix the first
planned
set.
Into filming.
Yep, to fix the first set. Because nothing ever goes to plan. Ever.
No.
Let's think. It's to the point where it's so predictable that things won't go to plan, you can put things not going to plan as part of your plan. That's why I said most estimates for a building cost will include the 50% more time for anything going wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it's better to overestimate how long it's going to take and come in under time and under budget, because that always looks better than going over time or budget.
Yeah, a lot better.
So my friends who work as contractors and stuff like that have talked about how it's always better to quote someone 3 months for a month-long job, because it's probably going to take you 2 months, and then they're happy that it took 2 months.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's you go for the mass overestimation because you know that there's going to be some problems, so if you think it's going to be done in a month... As you say 3 months, hoping that it'll be done in 2.
It could be done in a month if everything went to plan and I worked every single day and there was no issues with my supplier or anything like that. So just quote them 3 months, do it in 2.
There always is.
Yep.
That's always unforeseen circumstances.
So just think about when's the last time you did anything that went exactly to plan? I don't think I've even managed to make my dinner without something going wrong. Dropping a knife or something like that, or just my plate is on the side and I go to grab it and just nudge it and it's still got watermarks on it from the wash or whatever.
That's a tiny little thing, right? But when you escalate that into a house, as you say, with potentially dozens of people working on it at a time. And you've got different suppliers and workers and builders and plumbers and electricians all working in tandem with one another from separate companies, probably.
And then people whose jobs rely on other people doing their job. Because that's like, speaking of buying a house, it's like, fortunately, when I bought this place, I wasn't in a chain. But I've heard from friends who were in chains, which is where, okay, I'm going to buy this house, but I can't move into this house until the person I'm buying the house from manages to secure moving into the house that they're buying. And they could potentially be in another chain themselves. And it's like...
I think, like, when my dad last sold his house, it took, like, a year from being agreed a price to him leaving the house and selling it, because they were just in this chain where, you know, a few people were in the chain before this woman buying his house, and she couldn't get the money to him until her sale had completed, and
and that can be really stressful. I literally have everything right here. The moment I get told to go, I can go. But now I just have to wait around for potentially months.
Yeah, and, you know, as I say, a lot of these things, because it's grand designs, a lot of them are just completely unique projects where people are getting custom-fitted windows and stuff. So
bespoke
all of a
furniture.
sudden, instead of going down to, like, the local window shop, I don't know what they're called, but, like...
Glaziers.
Instead of that, it's, I'm importing glass from Holland, and it's specifically meant to be this one size, and then, like, the moment that isn't a perfect watertight fit, because the glass is, like, a quarter inch too thick for the seal or something, now you've got to negotiate that back with whoever the provider of that glass is, and then get them to recut it and get them to reship it.
So I reminded a friend of mine, he's moved into a more like traditional house now, but he previously lived in an old schoolhouse. It was a converted schoolhouse.
Right.
And it was a really interesting building. It was a really, really nice place. And you wouldn't know it to look at it, but his front door was custom made. Because most doors are made to a very specific size, a standard size, so that if you go to a shop and buy a door, it will fit on almost every door frame in the UK. His door was custom made. And he didn't realise this until one day when people were drunk at his house, someone fell backwards and put like a big massive knock in his door. And he called out the guy to fit his door, he measured it up and went, you're going to have to get one custom made. And it cost him $2,000 to put his front door back on. Because it was custom made. The seal that was around it, he had to get the entire seal done. He's like, well, they must have made the door and the seal at the same time. So we'd have to make, and you can't just make a new door, which is a front door, so it has to be sealed. It's like, with security systems, we're going to have to rip out the entire thing, put a new frame on. Alternately, we could rip it out and then chip out the frame to make it standard size. Then you have to get a workman in.
Mm-hmm.
He just left the home. So he got quoted like $2,000 to change his door. And if it was just like a standard sized door, he'd be like, okay, it's going to couple £100 to send a locksmith out to change your locks and fit the new door.
Mm-hmm. God.
Like, it would have taken literally less than a day if it was standard size. But when it's not, it's like a couple of grand, and it's going to take you maybe months because we've got to make it.
Yeah.
So he moved, and he never told the person who bought his house it was custom made. Because it was like only like an inch off. Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah, it matters when you've got to have a watertight fit, right?
Yep.
And God, it does say then there's one final visit to the site when it is finished or near finished. Once the occupants have moved in and a tour of the house is given, McLeod brings the episode to a close, summarising the house, its construction, and his opinions. And
imagine if we just said it's shit. So the end of all that, this house is shit.
I do think he's such a good presenter of the show, because he does do a really good job when he's summarising all up, not to just be like, look, they had a house, it went over budget, whatever. Like, he always weaves a story into each episode, and they always find that human element, and it just a lot of the time is just focusing on the fact that this person finally achieved their dream home, and they've gotten through these family problems and stuff like that, but just it isn't just a show about a house.
No, it's a
being
show
built.
about someone pulling their hair out, trying to make a house.
Yeah. And it really makes, like, you've really put things in perspective when you watch things like this of like, oh man, just the amount that people are just like, you know, ambitious and optimistic. It's nice to see to begin with, but it causes a lot of problems.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of the places I initially went to look at when I was looking at buying a place. I went to this, it was really nice. It was on top of a shop, which, you know, it's not unusual. You sometimes get, but the house wasn't there initially. Like, this guy he was an architect and he built the flat from scratch on top of this, and it was everything in it was bespoke. Like, it had, like, for example, a Italian marble countertop that he said we had to get a crane in to put it in. It's worth like $5,000. This thing will last longer than the building below it. The foundations to this building are not as solid as this fucking marble countertop. Mm-hmm. And the problem is when I looked to buy it, I was really interested, and they sent out a surveyor, and the surveyor just called me and he took one look at it and went, "You're not going to get a mortgage on this place." "What do you mean you're not going to get a mortgage?" He went, "Fire escape." I went, "Okay."
Yeah.
But it was got a fire escape. I went, "Yeah, but legally, you need to have at least 2 points of exit from any place that's over a certain amount of height. Mm-hmm. No bank in the UK will give you a mortgage because it does not adhere, especially in the UK with like the Grenfell disaster, they are very stringent about fire safety. The only way to make it compliant would be to put in a second fire escape, which there's not space to do. You will not get a mortgage on this place." And to my knowledge, that place is still for sale.
Right.
A year and a half later, presumably because every time the guy tries to sell it, this beautiful place, like I said, built with his own two hands, everything in there is designed by him. Bespoke, custom made. He's probably selling it for a steal. It's probably worth twice what he's selling it for. This is why I put the offer in, and no one can afford to buy it. Because anyone who can afford to buy it would never be able to sell it.
I mean, that's fair.
I felt so bad for the guy.
I know, speaking to one person when we were looking at houses, they were like, "Oh yeah, this is technically like a 4-bed property, but it's listed as 2 because the loft conversion can't be called bedrooms legally because of fire escapes."
Yeah, you need to have at least 2 avenues of escape.
Mm-hmm. So it's just like, technically there are 4 places with beds in this house,
but legally
there are 2 bedrooms because of laws, and it's like...
And that's the thing,
again, if you want... Laws, as we say, that are annoying but are put in place for people's safety.
Well, that's the thing, right?
As we talked about earlier with food and stuff. Oh, Karl's camera froze on for a second.
It did for a second, yeah. I think my internet just split for a second. I'm still recording though.
Mm-hmm.
I felt so bad for that guy because that was a beautiful place. And it's just, there's absolutely no way I get a mortgage on it. And if I get a mortgage, insurance. If I try to get insurance on it, it would cost me a fucking bomb.
Right.
I would not have been able to get the place insured. It would cost me thousands to get it insured. Because of that.
I'm having a look. Because
you're trying to find a specific episode.
Well, it does say very specifically in this is just like, it says that most properties featured in Grand Designs are hugely varied in style and design. Karl's camera's going very weird right now. I don't know what's going on.
My internet might be playing up a little bit.
Okay, I'll just continue to read this wiki page for a second and
I'm still recording, so it should still sync up fine.
From underground homes to converted water towers to buildings constructed in methods of sustainable architecture, the only common factor is that they are all unusual or extravagant. And then it pinpoints the most popular episode of the series for both Kevin McLeod and viewers was Series 3, Episode 3, with Ben Law's home and a sweet chestnut frame made from his own woodland costing very little.
Okay,
and
that's a good way of saving some costs, I suppose.
Yeah, so he's built this house, this cottage, from his own woodland wood. And I'll try and get up like a picture here. And I'll just like put it on screen for people to see in a second.
Yeah. And I just did a little bit of checking because I still have it bookmarked. I should probably delete the bookmark when I was looking at properties. And that property is still for sale.
Oh, really?
And
yeah,
keep in mind,
that doesn't surprise me.
I looked last year, and it is now 10, 15 grand cheaper than it was when I looked last year.
Yeah,
Hey, that's like where a hobbit would live.
That is a cool looking house, right?
It's a cool looking house, like I said.
And I'll get the picture up for video viewers now. Just send it across to Karl,
Yeah.
but
I won't send along like the link to this house for sale because I don't want.
of course not. Yeah.
I just don't want to get the guy like harassed or anything. I know that probably wouldn't happen, but at the same time, it's like I checked. It's still set. And do you know what the annoying bit about it was? I went for a viewing, and it had a full walk-in bathroom where the shower was was the entire corridor. And I looked at it, and he went, "Have you got a girlfriend, mate?" And I went, I'm looking for one. He went, "Well, when you do get one, you'll thank me for building this." And I'm so mad because the entire place was sick. I think I sent you pictures of it, didn't I, when I was looking at it?
Yeah.
And I think everyone's response was, "Why is it so cheap?" And it's like, they can't sell it. Even though everything is custom made and bespoke. Like I said, the guy was an architect. He was showing me like his design books and like showing the buildings he designed in Sheffield.
Man. And yeah, just that lovely looking woodland house there, but I mean, there's ones like that, right, where it's like, man, it's definitely not like what I would claim as super extravagant.
But it probably cost a bomb, right? Because that's the thing, everything's got to be made to measure.
Probably not. Because it says, like, it's made from his own woodland, so it cost him very little.
Interesting.
Or at least the building material cost him very little. I'd have to watch the entire episode to know.
Well, that's something I
for
did.
Sure, but
when I was in like the process of looking to buy a house, I got in a binge of watching like all the different design and home makeover shows. And one that I was watching is that this show called like How to Live Mortgage Free. And it's like a bunch of people who've like managed to, they live in less than usual ways to save on a mortgage. For example, it's like, here's a couple who live on a canal boat, for example.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And the one that got me is this guy, he bought an old church. And he's like, well, he bought an old church, so we could buy old churches as long as you agree to, like, not change the facade. Because, like, it's historically recognised, like, it's a historically protected place. But you can buy the church as long as you agree to maintain it, and as long as I pay to, I think it's like, there's something like the weather vane on top. It's like the weather vane on top is like this historical thing to the location. So I have to pay to maintain that. But the inside, I can do whatever the fuck I want with it. And you walk in, it's got like a studio in there and stuff.
Also, I don't know if you just want to quickly like disconnect from the call and rejoin, just see if that'll help your camera desync.
My bad.
No, it's fine. I was so powerful for a second then.
It could be Discord, right? Discord does shit the bed after like an hour or so of recording.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
yeah, you were just like going in slow-mo and it must be really off-putting for video viewers.
Fair. Yeah, but I found that fascinating of all the different ways people chose to live or just had ideas. Like I said, the canal boat one was the best. Because I remember there was a couple on it where it's this couple, and I've never felt more connected to random people than this older couple. And they're sat there and they went, well, me and my husband used to be teachers. And one evening we were sat there during exam season, both doing marking. And my husband looked over at him and went, I hate this. And his wife went, I do too. And they both quit their jobs, sold their house, bought a canal boat, and adopted 3 dogs. and the wife started just like, well, they sold their house for like 200 grand, bought a canal boat for 20 grand, did it all for 30 grand, got 150 grand on the hip, bought 3 dogs. The wife started writing children's books, and the husband joined a band. And all they do is like every day just wake up and sit on the front of the canal boat and drink a beer and a glass of wine. Then the husband goes and like jams with his mates down the pub, and she just sits and with the dogs writing. I went, that is living. And that's what they said. They went, when we were working to pay the mortgage on our old place, we were working to live.
Yeah.
Now we actually get to, and we were working to pay for this home that we didn't even get to live in because we spent most of it either asleep or pissed off. We own this boat free and clear, and now the majority of our time is not spent trying to pay for it, it's spent enjoying it. Well,
Karl, I was curious. I was like, I wonder if there's been like, a grand design on a boat.
Has there been?
There has. Let me just. I've closed the article now.
Well, I said I recommend because it was really interesting. And maybe tempted because one of the things I looked at when I saw that is when I was looking at things you could buy. You just go on Rightmove and you just like, okay, I'm gonna look at land. I saw that somewhere in like Sheffield in the Peaks, they were selling like a reservoir.
Oh wow!
For less than a house. I was like, I could buy a reservoir and just put a boat on the reservoir.
So I'm just gonna get it up on my OBS as well now. It kind of does. It's it's not a canal boat.
It's a barge, right?
It is a grand design barge.
Yeah, it was like the kind of thing you like a towing barge of like putting like rubbish on there or like cars or something. You know what? That looks like a really trendy pub. That looks like there should be like a microbrewery inside of that.
But it does say here, Notorious Kent Grand Design's Eco Barge is now being renovated by new owners. It says that the boat appeared on the show in 2007, but rose to infamy when it washed up on a beach abandoned years later.
Very eco-friendly. Leave it to the waves.
So, not only did they, have this grand design for a boat and, eventually, it was too much for them, they just fucking abandoned it.
That's frustrating, but, it's... I just live in a regular house. But while I was in that process, because I'm pulling my hair out, 'cause every time I make an offer on a place, it gets denied. I was just watching that, I'm well, Sheffield's got boats. How much do those canal boats cost? I could get one of those. At least then I own something.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the couples who they bought one, they live in London. Went, well, to get a flat in London with the same square footage as this boat, just to rent would be like $2,000 a month. We own this free and clear, and all we do is we're on the River Thames. So just walk out and get a bus. It takes us just as long to commute.
Yeah, where I currently am, it's not massively far away, but it, on a dog walk, sometimes we go past the Liverpool Leeds Canal.
Yeah.
And we've spoken to a couple of people who have got boats on there and stuff in the past, just walking the dogs and that, and been what's it like? And just, oh, it's great. And just all we have to do is we own the boat outright. It costs barely nothing. And then
mooring
all
fees
we have to do is pay for fees to park up essentially.
And I think you have to move it once a month or something legally you have to move the boat, which can just be
something like that.
Which can just be you turn the boat on and then you park in the place next to you.
Yes, it can literally be something like that, yeah.
Which a lot of people do they just swap places with their neighbour once a month because legally it has to move. Same thing a lot of the people on that show living mortgage free is buy a static caravan. Because and legally a static caravan can be on land, and one of the things they do is they buy land, put a static caravan on it, and legally it has to move and it has to be free stood for a maximum of 2 years. But all you have to do is just every 18 months, just pick it up, move it 1 foot to the right or left, and that complies with the law of it being moved. Because now, technically, it's a freestanding structure in a new place.
It's very literally following the letter of the law.
Which, you own the land, you own the stuff, and it's just the thing of, this is to stop people taking the piss. It's to stop someone, erecting, a block of flats on there or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of those of, it's just one of those weird tax things of to get away with it not being classified as a small house, it's got to be moved so that you can prove that it still has its original purpose as a caravan.
Yeah, and it gets taxed differently. And like I said, it's again to stop people taking the piss, and that's why the law is so lenient in that regard. And just the guy's just every 18 months, I just have to get my mate who's a builder, and he comes around, he lives onto the back of a lorry, and I just move it 3 foot across.
Yeah.
And all I've got to do is just strap down my pots and my pans. And he lives on, and he says I own the 3 acres, and I've got all this land to do what I want on.
And the one thing I haven't really watched is modern grand design seasons, because I imagine the last season or so is what's going to happen is just oh yeah, we had this problem, we had that problem, then COVID happened.
That's gonna
And
be
I
rough,
imagine
right?
that's just going to be every episode, right?
That's gonna be rough.
And I've not watched an episode before where it's like, because obviously it's not just got to be post-COVID, it's got to be at a point where they've like got it finished enough that they've then gone and filmed the episode and put the rest of the episode out and stuff. Like, it does say if a house is not completed before filming finishes, it will sometimes be revisited in a later episode. And in more recent series, Kevin MacLeod revisits past unfinished builds once they have been completed and then may stay overnight.
I like the idea that he shows up and is like,
He
stays.
just rocks in and he's like, right,
Just
what are we
with
having
his
for
little overnight bag.
breakfast? Yeah.
You're asking him to leave and he's pulling out his toothbrush and putting his pajamas on. You're like, wait, what?
He's like, oh, check-out's at 11, Kevin. Make sure you get out.
That's the one. I was like, is there like any like alternate dwelling situations you've seen that you are tempted by? Because recently I caught up with a friend of mine, and they were always like a bit of a free spirit. Like, they actually did that portrait of Spider-Man. That's me dressed as Spider-Man in front of the green screen. They painted that, and I met with them again after like years of not catching up properly. And they bought a van, like really big van, like a transit van from their dad who was a builder, and he just gave it to them. They put a bed in the back. They've got a dog that they found on the side of the road, and they now travel about the country, going to farms, doing face paintings at petting zoo days. And just the way they explained it is just like, yeah. And they just said, and I was like, does that not get boring? And then, no. And they sent me a picture later that day of them in a field with the dog and a cup of tea and a pot noodle, and there's like the entire field there. Just sat there they've got a little TV in the back, just watching that, and I went, you know what, good for you. And that did sound rather tempting. And they're currently just travelling across Europe doing the same thing.
Yeah, that kind of thing does sound like a nice thing, and our friends have done something similar, but like they have a house and then have gotten a van on the cheap from their dad, like an old van that he was getting rid of, and converted it into like a little holiday van. Where it's not their permanent living situation, but it's a similar kind of setup of just, putting a bed in the back of the van and having some like things to be able to, well, if we just want to go somewhere in the UK, just for a weekend away, we can like put the dog in the back of the van, drive up there and just spend like a week paying for like,
parking.
All they need, pay for is like either parking or like, I think there's some places like, camping sites and stuff where you can just like go put your van in there and stuff like that and just pay a minimal fee.
Yeah, that's what my friend does.
And just like go enjoy different parts of the country. And
sounds tempting, right? It's like that canal boat one. Because the thought I was that I'm a bit tall. And the person says, oh no, my husband's 6'5". And all you do, we just paid someone $2,000 and he came and he lowered the boat. All it means is we can just we can now just put less weight in the boat, but it's a boat designed to like ship freight and cargo. Our stuff does not weigh enough to even make it go down. If anything, we had to buy more stuff, put bricks in the bottom to weigh the boat down. And it's like, and they can walk around comfortably. They talk about it. It's small. It's about the same size as a small studio flat in a city. The difference is that when you go outside, there's just the entire river there, and you have basically a balcony, which most studio apartments don't have a balcony.
Yeah.
The equivalent of a balcony on the waterfront. And I said, there's got a dog. I'm like, that sounds so good. That sounds like such a good life.
I know, right? Yeah. Like, it just, sometimes it is so tempted to just like,
fuck it all.
Fuck it. I'm gonna remove myself from regular society and just like, I'm just gonna go live in a van or a boat or something and just go live my own life.
The other one as well is those storage unit homes, because some of those look dead nice.
Yeah, you can make them really nice, yeah.
And there's one other one, again, it's a guy bought an old garage, which doesn't sound like that appealing to live in, but when he cleared it all out, and now essentially what he's got is like a 1,000 square foot metal box with multiple stories. And he just put like 3 stories of like storage units in there for his house, and then the garage bit is like his workspace, because he was an artist. I was like, that also looks really... Obviously, it's like the facilities and stuff aren't top-notch, but still. And he's like, well, I don't have to pay any taxes. I own it free and clear. It cost me, if I was going to buy a property with a similar square footage, it cost me 4 times as much.
Yep. And I love both watching Grand Designs, I think it's so fascinating to watch the process, but I also just really like watching those shows. Like, there's a couple on Netflix about just like tiny homes.
Yeah.
And just like, fuck it, we just live in like a tiny home, renovated like trailer or whatever. And there's like loads of really clever different solutions they come up with for like living in small enclosures and stuff like that. And it's just like, it is really tempting to just look at that and go like, oh, but you could just, for relatively little, you could just build that.
Yeah, it's like those, I think Amazon sell
you just own it outright and you can move it about, and yeah.
The real cost is the land of where you can put it.
If you buy land, right? Yeah. Depending on how you're going to do it, yeah.
So that the place that I've got, it's got like a big gap under the stairs. It's like, you've not been to my new place yet, but there's a gap under the stairs, and when I was looking at it, the guy told me, like, yeah, there's other people who have this aspect to their property. And one guy, what he did is he just closed off the stairs, and it's not that much space in there, but it's the space like a small box room in an apartment or something like that. And he said he turned that into like a little, he like chipped away some of the stairs, like obviously not to the point where it's unsafe, but he made as much space as he could in here by clearing out the unnecessary stuff. And he put a bed in there for his kids, because like he saw his kids on the weekend. So obviously he can't live in there permanent, but it's just a little mini movie room that's soundproofed, that his kids will go in and play Xbox. And I was like, that sounds so good. Like, you know, like basically like one of those like sunken in big comfy chairs, like lie in and watch TV or whatever.
Just build like a little nook, right?
Oh yeah, a reading nook is like something people are more familiar with. They're like, there's not space to put a bed in here, but there's a space to put a big comfy chair.
Yeah.
He said he just had that under the stairs, and I said, man, that sounds so good.
But yeah, I would definitely encourage, like, I'm sure that it's easy enough to like go on to YouTube or like go to Channel 4 website or something and watch some of these. I'm sure, like, for our American viewers and foreign viewers and stuff, there's easy enough ways. I'm sure if you Google like just Grand Designs, I'm sure someone's got some ways of watching them internationally, but
just Grand Design's biggest fails on YouTube. There's bound to be some.
Like, it's really fascinating TV. I know that it might not be for everyone, but I just really, even before being an adult worrying about like housing and stuff like that, even as like a teenager and stuff, I found these shows really interesting.
It scratches a very specific itch.
And normally it is nice to see at the very end, like, as I say, most of it is ending with there was like more speed bumps along the way than we thought, but we've now taken out 18 different loans with the banks and we've finished up and we've got our dream house.
Yeah, like, you know, our dream was realised. It's nice to see that, right? Like, someone realised their dream.
Mm-hmm. And like, just as well, some of the different like grand designs that people have for these ideas for houses. Like,
it's that mortgage-free show.
We've gone from a nice like woodland hobbit home to a fucking eco barge that got abandoned. That's the two like things we've looked at. And yeah, there's a wide variety of different things, more than just like, I found a house, and as you say, like people doing the fucking landlord special on them.
Yeah, gutted it and just turned it into 6 bedrooms that I charge $200 a week for.
But yeah, I think we can leave it there.
Sounds good.
Maybe one day, you know, me or Karl might be on Grand Designs. Like, yeah, I think I'm going to make this house, and it's going to cost me $5 in like 3 weeks.
Well, for a while.
Like, just the black screen comes up like 10 years later.
Prior to the pandemic, when with FactFiend, that was one of the plans, buy office space. And then I realized the pandemic made me realise that's a stupid idea. Office space is a terrible fucking investment. Do you know what's a good investment? A house, because you can live in it.
Yep. You can.
Worst comes to worst, you can always live in it. You can't live in your office.
I can't wait.
So you can have an office in your house.
Karl's new show, like House Flipper 2.0.
What was the thing? I was like, remember the FactFiend offices? I was in the process of buying a property to put an office in, and then I realised during the pandemic of like, well, there's 2 years where I've not been able to go to my office, but I'll put an office in my house. So I'd rather buy a house and put an office in it than have an office that I can't live in.
Put a house in it, yeah. So yeah, thank you all for listening to this week's podcast.
Yes.
And, instead of which wiki won this week as an official poll, just like
What's
let us know in
scarier?
the comments, I guess.
What's scarier, the thought of never owning a house, or
the thought of drinking pink sauce?
yeah, pink sauce where you don't know what the ingredient? Just drinking the mysterious pink fluid,
Mystery sauce.
the mystery pink sauce. Oh, Karl's mystery sauce. There we go.
We're gonna have like Luke's special sauce and Karl's mystery sauce.
What's worse?
They'll be our 2 new Patreon goals.
Oh man, it's like call it the gentleman's relish. That's if I was making a product, I call it Smallwood specialty relish, because no one wants that.
Look forward to buying Karl's milk nut bag online.
Get some milk nut bar made with nut milk. Karl's specialty relish made with nut milk. Let's go.
Oh, Karl's nut milk. Let's go.
It's the specialty relish. Either way, cheers everybody.
Thank you all.